Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech Alive on YouTube. Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday. That's what it is. I remember what day of the week it is. I am up to date on current events. That means we've only got 2 days to go. In fact, 48 hours from now, I will probably be rocking an iPhone 15 in my hand, and I can check out these exclusive battery features that people with review units are already discovering for us. In my opinion, completely, we need a term for this. I guess the term is software locking. What is a good term you would say? It's software locking is a little too vague. I want to get more specific than that. But basically, there's this thing that Apple's done in the past, which I believe they are definitely doing again, where there is a new software feature that they only enable on the latest iPhone that is clearly, like, just blatantly obvious. This kind of ties into the Apple Watch, the new Apple Watches, which I still haven't done a video on. I should get around to that, shouldn't I? But when Apple comes up with a software feature, only adds it to the latest generation of something, even though they can add it to the older generations, in some cases they probably will. The other big example, I don't know why, but it stuck out in my head, was when the iPhone 11 came out. Maybe it's because I have an iPhone 11 that I'm thinking about it. They had all of these new pro features in the hardware gating. Thank you, Burkhardt. That's a good term for it. They're hardware gating. In the iPhone 11 series, they finally let you change the resolution and frame rate of the video recording from the camera app. You didn't have to go to settings anymore. So it's basically this thing, where you just tap on it and you can change it to 4K, or you can change it to 24 FPS or 30 FPS, and you don't have to jump to the settings app. Well, when they first rolled this out, it was exclusive and only worked on the iPhone 11s. And they did not bring it to any other iPhone until the iOS update the following year. But for, people who don't pay attention to the betas and all that, that's a long time. That's basically a year-long wait for a very simple software feature. It did not require some fancy A13 neural engine. No. Anything could do that. It is very simple code, but they intentionally also came up with a feature called Quick Take, where you could instantly switch into recording a video if you held down the shutter button and then locked it in place. I believe that came to older iPhones in the following update as well. And now we're seeing it with the iPhone 15, which it's kind of bittersweet because I love this feature. If you go back and watch my iOS 17 and 16, I think, maybe even 15. For several years now, I've been requesting a charge limit, similar to what Teslas have had since day one. I agree with you, Ethan. A charge limiter should not be a pro feature. I mean, yes, it's available on non-pro iPhones. It's on all the 15s. It's pure hardware gating, where basically you can cap the phone's battery to stop at 80%, which in my opinion is great, because this severely improves your battery health, which I know most people don't care that much about, or at least some people care way too much about it. Some people care very little about it, which is fine. Personally, I think people get over obsessed with it. So if you're nervous and uncomfortable with the amount of battery health discussions that go on these days, this is going to make it even worse. Because not only do they now let you cap the charge limiter at 80%. So Chris is asking what a charge limiter is. It basically says don't charge up the battery past a certain percentage. And why would you want that, you may ask? Well, batteries, because of their voltage sag and also because of their physical milliamp hour capacity, they degrade faster the longer they stay at 100%. So Apple tried to do their own clean, minimal, don't even think about it solution by rocking the optimized battery charging feature, which, in my opinion, kind of works, but a lot of the time doesn't understand your charging behavior that well. It takes a while for the algorithm to kick on, and even when it does, it doesn't account for odd behaviors or different charging habits. But basically, optimized battery charging would analyze your charging routine and then try to cap it at 80% until right before you wake up, and then it goes up to 100%. But there's some people like me that work at a desk or have frequent access to a charger. Maybe you drive for Uber, maybe you do taxi services and that kind of thing. For people like that, who have access to a wireless or wired charger at all times, they're degrading their batteries so much faster because they don't have a charge limiter. So when you leave your phone connected to power, because when you're driving or working, you don't have to fumble around with, okay, is it charged? Is it too low? Is it too high? It's too much work to think about. So a charge limiter solution is great, particularly if you're rocking a phone with a battery life that easily lasts you all day. Like if you're not ending each day at 20% or 0%, you're more like me and ending each day with 40% or 50%, then a charge limiter is fantastic because it keeps the battery from going up to 100% unless you explicitly tell it to, and that preserves your battery health by a very substantial margin. So not only did they add the charge limiter, but now they're also adding a cycle count, and they didn't stop there, a manufacturer date, which I think is very interesting. So Ray Wong tweeted this out, showcasing what's in the iPhone 15 settings. Now show battery cycle count. So you can see how many cycles the phone has gone through, which means the amount of energy the phone has used equates to one um, full battery charge. So, for the record, if you charge your phone up to 100% and then you drained it down to zero, that's one cycle. But also, if you let your iPhone stay at 80%, because you use the charge limiter, and then it goes down to 70% in a day because you're not using it. If you do that 10 times, that's also one cycle. I've seen some misinformation or some confusion online about that, where people think, oh, well, if I'm just going from 80 to 70 all the time, I haven't used a cycle. No, a cycle is just, it doesn't matter which percentages. It could be 100 to 50 twice. It could be 66 to 33 three times. That's still a cycle. So you don't have to hit 100 or go to zero to be adding to the phone cycle count. But that's definitely going to make people, I think, more paranoid, um, probably a bit more analytical when we're reporting on battery health now. Not only are people going to be tweeting and posting in the chat, okay, here's my battery health, here's my battery health after this long. Now they're going to say, here's when my phone was manufactured, here's how many cycles it has, and here's the battery health. Because keep in mind, the cycles is not the only factor pointing towards battery degradation. It is a pretty major one, yes, but a lot of the debate on, like, someone could have more cycles than someone else and still have better battery health if they kept the phone between 80 and 20%. Basically, when you let the phone die all the time and get under 20%, that's going to contribute to more battery degradation. And if you leave it at 100% and at those high states of charge for longer periods, that will also contribute. So cycle count is not necessarily the end all be all when it comes to battery health. Um, if I don't do 100% to 0%, my battery will last forever. Well, no, obviously, I know you're joking, but obviously, no battery is going to last forever. If there was, it would be LFP. That's the kind of battery in my car, but phones don't use lithium iron phosphate. And even LFPs won't last forever, but they will last an insanely long time. Like, potentially outlive me. The battery might still be able to hold an adequate amount of charge even when I'm dead. Probably not the same story with the iPhone batteries, but I do think that this charge limiter will probably preserve battery health by a pretty substantial margin, because keeping it, heat, like Halami said, is also a big factor. So making sure that the phone doesn't overheat all the time, which is partly why I think so many people were experiencing drastic battery health degradation on the 14 Pros. I think those phones run really hot, and I do think that the iPhone 15s will run at a similar temperature, probably even more so if you have a 15 Pro, especially with the higher brightness levels. The 5G modems are incredibly inefficient. That's why they chew through your battery life very quickly when you're doing any kind of uh, high intensity bandwidth stuff like a video call or whatever. But sorry, I didn't mean to ignore these. I just wanted to finish my thought. 89 Tech, thank you for the super chat. Would I consider getting the 15 now then? No, I don't. I mean, I'm reviewing it. I'm getting one on Friday, but I already told you guys I'm not coming up with a conclusion before I get the phone. I need to try the phone and use it, and then I will tell you the conclusion. I'm not going to. I think it's not fair. I don't think it's as fun or as interesting for me to decide whether or not I'm going to keep a phone before I've even tried it. So if I try it and I find out that I like it a lot and the features are so great that I don't want to switch to anything else, then okay, I'll keep it. But if I find it's not that different and I still feel comfortable with the 11, then I'll keep the 11. But I'm not gonna come to a conclusion before that. And Chris Norton super chatted twice, by the way. Thank you very much. He said hello. He said, "Are the battery health updates on older phones?" No, that's what's upsetting to me. Although I'm very confident that in a future software update, Apple will likely add all of these battery features to the older iPhones. But as of right now, that's the frustrating thing. They're not. And there's really nothing stopping Apple from adding these features. And what's weird is Apple is not even really flexing these features. They just put them in the 15, but they're not like bragging about it. Like they're waiting for the people with review units to brag about it as a means to try to convince you to upgrade, which it's already working. People like 8 9 Tech are saying, "Oh, okay. So since there's these exclusive battery features on the 15, that means you have to keep the 15 now, right?" And I'm like, I mean, for one, I don't like the logic behind that of like, well, they could make my old phone do that, but I'm not going to because they're not going to because they want me to buy a new one. Okay, Apple, you got me. It's the same thing with the double tap feature that they brought to the Series 9 and the Ultra, which I've actually charged up, even though I haven't worn it in a while. It's still here. I got my Series 7, and I thought that might be a fun thing to test out live. Turn on the, I think it's called Assistive Touch or something. Um, Let's see. My 14 Pro Max is at 87%. Have never had one drop so quickly. It depends on the person, but I do think that the people with battery health degradation tend to probably be using their phones more. Because I do know some people that still have 14 Pros and they have pretty good battery health. But if you add to the cycles, that might give you a little bit more information. So the cycle count is not the end all be all for answers on exactly how your battery has degraded, but it might paint a picture. If someone's saying, "Hey, why the heck is my 14 Pro at 85%?" and it turns out you have twice the number of cycles as a 14 Pro user with 95%, that might be why. It's like, okay, you use your phone way more than the other guy, so you degrade your battery faster. Aaron Hewitt, thank you for the super chat. I run my phones between 20% and 80% screen off due to being blind, still at 99% after 3 years. Hey, I guess you got some perks from that. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're still able to. It's cool that YouTube still lets you handle the chat and everything, and you can still use your phone. I know iPhones have a ton of accessibility features, so I'm happy to hear that. Um, Halami says, "I was wondering. I thought you liked the 6.7-inch size. Have I changed your mind? I thought you'd like the 15 plus for that." No, if you go back and watch my video on why I thought the 15 plus would be decent, it was mainly because there were some rumors about the battery capacities getting way bigger that turned out to be totally false, utterly and blatantly incorrect. Someone claimed to have the new milliamp hour capacities for the new iPhones, and they were very specific. And usually those are pretty accurate, which is why I believed them. And they said that we were getting a battery increase across the board, and it couldn't be further from the truth. The actual battery capacities were basically identical. So the better battery life was going to be the main reason I was interested in a 15 plus. But no, I still appreciate big phones and small phones. If you go back, I think it was 2020. In 2020, I did a whole skit debating between, do I keep the 12 Pro Max or the 12 Mini? Because I was very torn. So even 3 years ago, I was making videos about how I don't like this size, the size of the phone I'm rocking. I don't like the middle size because I'm a more saturated person. I kind of lean into, I want, if I buy a white phone, I want it to be super white. If I buy a black phone, I want it to be super black. I like things to be intentional. So I enjoyed the 12 Pro Max, but I also really enjoyed the 12 Mini, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted to keep rocking. So that whole video was basically explaining the differences, the advantages, the perks of each. One was cheaper, one had better battery life, one had a better camera, but one fit better in the hand. So I go back and forth on that still. But these days, after living with the iPhone 10 for a while, and then after that, the iPhone SE2 for a while, I guess I'm a bit more biased towards smaller phones again. Um, it's not that I don't like big phones. Big phones are cool. If you want to go pro, in my opinion, it makes sense to just go all the way. Get the best battery you can, get the best camera you can. If you're just if money's no object, and even the maxed out iPhone isn't gonna cause you any big financial hurdles or anything, then yeah, why not just go big or go home? I totally get that, but these days I tend to find that most of us are not utilizing our smartphones to their maximum potential. We're mostly using them for social media, email, texting, taking some pictures and videos. But the truth is, even my 4-year old iPhone 11 still, in my opinion, takes amazing photos, great video performance, and all the upgrades since then are just incremental, nitty gritty details and tiny pixel peeping comparisons that most people don't notice or care about. So I'm getting more of the to the point of where I'm like, all newer phone, any phone that came out, any iPhone that came out in the past 2 to 3 years is probably great for everybody. Um, so because there's so many people that are pushing the narrative, and I see it in the YouTube polls and everything, because there's so many of you that are convinced you need the latest and greatest and you want the 15 Pro Max, I'm intentionally trying to lean the opposite direction now. And while I do like big phones, I think more people need to be comfortable with smaller phones, and we need more people pushing the narrative that small phones are beneficial and are comfortable and affordable. And I don't think there's as much of a push as there should be towards small phones. Um, can you change the charge limiter to just stop at 80% or whatever percent you want it to be? As far as I can tell, it's capped at 80%. There's just a little toggle in settings that says limit battery to 80%, which I'm going to turn on from day one. That's seriously going to be a huge help for battery life, especially because there's so many wireless chargers in my life. I just leave the phone on the charger. If it caps at 80%, it's going to save the battery health a lot. But yeah, your cycle count is also going to determine your used resale value for sure. Now, not only when you're selling an iPhone will people ask what the battery health is, they'll also ask for the cycle count and the manufacture date. Nobody's talking about how standby mode doesn't work on phones that have always on option, despite what Apple says with iOS 17. I'm trying to remember standby mode. What even is standby mode? Um, you are stuck between 20 and 80, so 60% of use for a 1,500 euro phone. I mean, you don't have to. It's an option. If someone wants to preserve their battery health, should we let them? That's the question. I guess this is what annoys me the most is when people are against there being options that are in settings for people that care about longevity. This is not turned on by default. By default, the iPhone 15 will charge and discharge just the exact same way your current iPhone does. But for some people who leave their phone on a charger all day that want to preserve their battery health, there's an option for them now. We've been asking for it for years. Apple gave it. Not quite in standby is where you dock your iPhone horizontally. Wait, what are you talking about? That have always on option. I don't understand what that means because they definitely do. I use the nightstand. Yeah, no, I have an iPhone 11 and I use that feature. I mean, my phone's moving, so it's not going to activate right now. But I used it last night on my iPhone 11. It doesn't it doesn't stay on unless you have a iPhone that goes down to 1 hertz. But if otherwise, it just turns into nightstand mode, just like the Apple Watch. It needs to detect a little bit of vibration and then it shows the clock. But it does still activate. I think that's working how it's supposed to. Yeah, I think it works fine. Maybe that's why no one's talking about it, is because you don't understand it fully. I'm all for it. My MacBook battery got destroyed because the automatic implementation from Apple didn't work properly. The battery situation got better with coconut battery. Exactly. Thank you, Eduardo. I use a program called Al Dente because I was upset with how quickly my MacBook battery was degrading. I don't really care at the end of the day because my MacBook battery is so long anyway, but I just figured this was unnecessarily wasteful because sometimes I'm traveling and stuff, but other times I'm working at my desk and my MacBook is plugged in for days, maybe weeks at a time. And during those times, I would like it to just pull all of its power from the wall and not touch the battery so that there's not that many cycles. What was concerning to me was that after a couple of years, I did not have that many cycles because it was plugged in so much. It had maybe 40 cycles or so, and the battery health had already gone down almost 10%. And I was like, that's way too much for 40 cycles. An iPhone, when it gets up to 600, 800 cycles, that's when it makes sense for the battery health to get down to, you know, 85, 80%. That's normal. But 40 cycles going down 10% was not not right. So I installed Al Dente. That did slow down my battery degradation substantially. I think it is still sitting at around 90% now. But it's because you can't trust the Apple built-in optimized battery charging thing. It just doesn't work. And yeah, replacing the battery costs money and it's wasteful. It's more harmful to the environment to degrade batteries and go through them faster. It's far better for the environment to just keep what you have. Apple's not going to say that because that doesn't help their bottom line. But if you really want to help the environment, don't buy a new iPhone. Don't buy a new Apple Watch, and also preserve your battery health so that you don't have to replace it as quickly. Um, Older iPhones have ambient display instead of always on display because of the display technology. Imagine an LCD always being on makes no sense considering it'd kill battery life. Well, standby mode only works with when it's connected to power, but it wouldn't affect battery life that much. But yeah, it's just a display health thing. I get it. Apple doesn't feel comfortable leaving the display on 24/7 if the display is still locked at 60 hertz. Is replacing battery a better option if we know this 13 series? I mean, it's always going to cost money. Whether you have Apple Care or not, a battery replacement is going to cost more, opposed to a free software setting where you can just go in and flip a toggle. I was tweeting about how great this was. I was like, I've been asking for this for years, and then people were complaining about it. It was like, guys, Apple is so like anti options and anti controls and customization. And here's like one tiny little thing they give us, and now you're complaining. Like, guys, just don't use it if you don't care about it. This doesn't take away anything from the iPhone experience if you don't want it to. Some people wanted it, so they gave us the option. And there's still people who are like, oh my gosh, all this thought going into your battery. It's not a lot of thought. It's one setting toggle. It literally would take 2 seconds to activate. And it would probably preserve your battery health by, I'm gonna guess it'll make your battery last longer by a ratio of probably 40% at least, maybe more, by just not capping the charge limit at 100% every day. There's some people that work, like pretty high hours with Uber, or they work at their desk and they just have their phone docked and connected to power all the time. Those people that are just leaving the battery at 100% constantly, that definitely degrades it. 100%. That's the state of charge, and that's my certainty that it degrades it. So maybe you're the kind of person that doesn't have a charger and you need that 100% charge every single day. That's fine. Nothing changes for you. But just building in that option for those who want it, it's it's actually, to me, that option makes it less stressful. Because now if I leave my phone on the charger and it's at 100% and it's still keeping it 100%, I'm just thinking to myself, oh God, you're degrading faster, which just feels so wasteful to me. Um, I'm not sure how it works on always display iPhones. I don't know if they actually stay on. I just know they don't require to be charging. Oh, I didn't know that. Quentin Williams, thank you for the super chat. Didn't say anything, but it's very nice of you. Would I recommend replacing battery over buying a newer phone? My sister's iPhone 12 went down to 81%. It's still a good phone, just throttled. Yeah, it's definitely cheaper to get a new battery than it is to get a whole new phone. If based on the way you're phrasing it, yeah. I mean, let me just say this on the record for everybody in the back, by the way. You should not be upgrading your iPhone simply because your battery health has gone down. That's a horrible reason to upgrade, in my opinion. Terrible reason, actually. Like, you should be upgrading your phone if there's something that you're not satisfied with when it comes to the displays, the cameras, the chip, the software support. You're unsatisfied with Lightning and you want USB-C. Those are reasons to get a new phone. Just because your battery health is low, that is not a good reason to get a new phone. That's downright wasteful. If you really care about your battery health and that's really it, of course, yeah, just get a battery replacement. That's going to be so much cheaper and better for the environment. Um, than the monthly battery health check. It won't be 100% after 6 months if you keep charged at 100% all the time. Well, I can't say exactly because the battery health percentage is a guesstimate. It's not entirely scientific. Apple is guessing with iOS. That's why we've seen battery health go down and up after software updates. Because sometimes your iPhone gets a new software update and that kind of resets the calculation or says, oh, you know what? We were being too generous before, or actually we were being too harsh before. there's never been an instant. The battery isn't physically getting healthier because of an update, by the way. That's not how that works. It's not physically possible for the battery health to go, oh, I'm better now. That's not what happens. That's just the software. So some people I've heard of say, like, oh, I had my 14 Pro since launch day and it's been 9 months and it's still at 100% health. It's not actually at 100% health. The guesstimator is just not detecting any meaningful degradation, but there absolutely is degradation with all batteries. It's unavoidable. There's no way around it. Um, I'm 2 years in with my iPhone 11, and now I'm planning to go to the 15 Pro because USB-C and everything else. Yeah, I mean, I get it. If you want to upgrade, that's fine, but don't do it just because your battery health is low. That's a horrible reason. Quentin Williams super chatted. In my opinion, optimized battery charging should have been able to use your sleep schedule before. I believe it does. It's just not everybody uses that alarm sleep schedule thing. Um, so that's the reason I don't think it's a good solution. If and also sometimes there's exactly like the situations I'm describing where if you're in a job or in a workplace where your phone can be at a charger all day, that's much worse for the battery health. I understand why people want to put them on chargers, but it's going to be way too much to ask people, hey, you should take your phone off the charger if it's over 80%, but then when it gets down to 20, you should put it back on. No, people just want to drop their phone and let it sit on the charger and not think about it. So we need more passive battery health features. And to me, optimized battery charging wasn't quite enough, especially for people like me. I know there's a lot of people with iPhones that just sit on desks and have them charging there, or people in the car that have them on a charger because they're using it for work or whatever. And the great thing, I don't know if this can work with wireless charging. I'm not sure if it's possible with inductive, but with wired charging, particularly with MacBooks, you can actually, with the 80% charge limit, you can actually kick off the battery. So right now, my MacBook is plugged in and I have al dente turned on, so the battery's capped at 80%. And if you go up to the battery settings, it says power source power adapter, which means the battery is not even being touched. So even if I use 100 watt hours, which would technically be one cycle, I'm pulling all of that 100 watt hours purely from the wall outlet plugged in. I'm not touching the battery, so I'm not adding cycles. So hypothetically, I don't know if Apple's doing that exact same thing with the iPhone, but I don't see why they couldn't. With that charge limit, the iPhone could be getting all of its power from what you have it plugged into and not even adding to the cycle count, which is great. That's honestly the best way to preserve battery health is to not use the battery. But of course, that's not a good solution. If you tell people, "Oh, you want to preserve your battery health? Okay, just don't use your phone." That doesn't work. But if I told you, okay, if you're working in a place where you have access to a power source and you can just leave it plugged in all the time, now you're not adding cycle count. That preserves your resale value. That's better for the environment. It means that your battery's not degrading as fast. There's just all kinds of advantages. And honestly, it's such a simple software thing. It's not a big deal. That's why I'm so confused why the iPhone 15 has this and they didn't add it to all the other iPhones. I really hope we don't have to wait for iOS 18 to get this feature because it's a very simple line of code. It is honestly not a very it's not a very complex like advanced feature. It's just a smart feature. It's very simple for the power management system to just say stop charging the battery. That is not hard at all. So I'm very glad that they added this and it feels like, this was at the top of my wish lists for several years and now they've added it. So my iOS 18 wish list just got a lot more difficult because they added one of my top requested things. Okay, so thank you for the super chat, Quentin Williams. I hope I answered your question. 89 Tech super chatted again. What's the most underrated and overrated iPhone? Uh, okay, actually, I got pretty simple answers for both. 13 mini is the most underrated. I'm disappointed by how few people bought that phone. Everyone keeps saying, well, mini iPhones have bad battery life. I disagree. The iPhone 11, which everyone praised as having great battery life, is the exact same battery life as the iPhone 13 mini. And the iPhone 11 is still actually one of the most popular smartphones in use globally right now. And everybody's happy with that. I think that there's a narrative online that is trying to convince everybody that battery life is this end all be all, like you need to buy the phone with the best possible battery life, when the truth is a lot of us have access to power and chargers everywhere anyway. And your battery health degrades over time. So it's like, if you're using your phone so much to the extent that you're at 0% at the end of every single day, then I don't think you have a battery life problem. You have a power supply problem or a smartphone addiction problem. Probably a combination of all those. But if you're not addicted to your smartphone, but you just use it a lot for work, then you're going to need battery banks anyway. Whether you buy the most expensive iPhone or the mini iPhone, you're going to need some kind of mobile power source. And thankfully, battery banks are really cheap. You can buy a 10,000 or 20,000 milliamp hour battery bank, which can probably fast charge your iPhone for probably less than $30 on Amazon. But people don't want to do that because, oh, I got to pack around another battery. So instead, they spend an extra $500 on the Pro Max just for that battery. And I don't think it's very practical. It's like, I think you could have been fine with just a cheaper iPhone and a battery bank because that Pro Max is going to degrade. And before you know it, you're going to be using that up. So you're probably going to end up needing a battery bank or another power source anyway. Or your logic is going to be, oh, my battery health degraded in a year. I guess I need to buy the 16 Ultra now. And then you're going to degrade that in a year. And you just have to keep buying the latest and greatest. And I just don't think it's necessary. The most overrated iPhone, I get a lot of flack for this, but I think there is a cult like obsession and following with the iPhone 4. Don't get me wrong, I was excited. I literally jumped up in my chair when it came out. This was like the first iPhone I actually followed the leaks for. I knew what iPhones were, but I wasn't really that engaged with the tech community. I didn't know that much about it, but I started watching tech videos from YouTube channels that aren't even around anymore. But they were like, look, Gizmodo got their hands on with this iPhone 4 prototype. Someone left it in a bar, and there was all this debate. Is it real? Is this fake? Did someone mock this up or something? Are they just doing it for clicks? And then when finally Apple unveiled it, I didn't know what the release schedule was back then. I didn't know that iPhones came out at. Back then, I think they used to come out during Dub Dub, but then later they switched to September. I didn't know when it was coming, but just one day it dropped on the website, and I was like, whoa, it's real. Okay, look, they changed the design. But then a few years went by and I got over it. And I was just like, those circular volume buttons aren't that practical. They're not really the proper size for your fingers. The squared off design cuts into your hand a little bit more. It still had the 30 pin connector. It was cool that it gained the front facing camera, but still, I just think there's all these people that are just like, the iPhone 4 is the most amazing. That was peak iPhone and nothing tops the iPhone. And I hear that all the time. This was my favorite iPhone. And I don't, it had a glass back for no reason. Like I'm fine with glass backs now because they allow for inductive charging, but back then they really just made the phone more fragile and break easier. And it was like the cool new premium looking phone, but I felt like all iPhones are that way to a certain extent. So I know I get a lot of flack and a lot of people disagree with me, but I think the iPhone 4 is it's not a bad iPhone by any means. It's just, it's not that special out of the rest of the iPhones that have ever come out. Like I know all the differences between the different generations, and I just think that one gets a little too much credit for what it was. It was cool. It was a meaningful step forward, but so was the 5S, and so was the 6, and so was the 7. And those all brought meaningful upgrades. But to me, the iPhone 4 doesn't like stand out in a substantial way like it does for some other people. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I never technically owned an iPhone 4. My first iPhone was the 5. That was my first phone, actually. I didn't own any other phone before that. Okay. There's another super chat from Somalia. Thank you. Says, what's funny is that this entire discussion is happening because Apple shows that battery percentage and they'll never remove it as it makes some people upgrade or at least buy new batteries. Well, it's funny, but also Apple was forced to add it. That was part of the lawsuit. Apple got sued for, it's true, but it's taken out of context a lot. Apple was slowing down iPhone processors um, with software updates. But if you were following the tech community at the time, like I was, this was back in like the iPhone 6 and 6S days. It was around 2014, 2015. The reason Apple started slowing down CPUs was not to get you to upgrade. The reason they started slowing down the processors was because the iPhones were dying before they hit 0%. The battery management system was getting inaccurate over time. So they throttled the CPU to make sure that the battery life would last longer and that the phone would actually die when it got to 0%. So the problem with the lawsuit was not actually about them slowing down the processor. The problem was them not disclosing that. So when they got sued over it, because the issue was they were instructing employees to say, oh yeah, your iPhone's getting slower because it's older and you need to upgrade to get that peak performance back. Apple was not explicitly stating to the customer that you can get that performance back if you just upgrade the battery. So that's where they were at fault. That's where they got caught. And part of the settlement of that lawsuit was, of course, the overall settlement was you have to be more transparent. You can't tell someone that the CPU has slowed down, even though your software update is the reason for it. So yeah, that affects other aspects of the iPhone. You know, there's other things that were probably slower because of that CPU throttling. But Apple still does that. They still can do that. It's not illegal for them to slow down the phone. It's just a lot of people think, oh, Apple slows down the phone, so you buy a new one. It's like, well, they do that to preserve the battery, because they thought the CPUs were fast enough, and probably didn't translate to that big of a thing. But the settlement was they had to include things like the battery health, and they had to explicitly state within settings if your iPhone was running on peak performance or if it had experienced an unexpected shutdown, it would show limited performance, and that if you replace the battery, you would get that performance back. So Apple added it kind of against their will, in my opinion. I don't think if they would have had that lawsuit, they probably ever would have added the battery health thing, because it does make a lot of people paranoid. And it's honestly kind of a techie, geeky thing that I don't think Apple really thinks the average consumer should care about or think about. Apple just wants everything to work, everything just turns on and it's so smooth and everything's fine. That's what Apple would want. I don't, if Apple had it their way, they probably wouldn't have a battery health in there, but they have to. Um, Okay, let me catch up here. Chris Norton super chatted again. Far too generous. You got to slow down on the super chats, Chris. He said, "What is your battery at? Mine is 100% battery health." Well, good for you. I'm happy for you. Last I checked, I'll check it again just for fun since we're all talking about it. I'm at 85% on my iPhone 11, but it's still running at peak performance, which is great. I've got clean energy and optimized battery charging turned on. I've never actually had clean energy charging activated. I think it's because where I live, without giving too much away, I'm pretty aware where most of my power comes from, and it's mostly all renewable sources. Um, for obvious reasons, I can't go into how I know, but I know. And I've never had the paused for clean energy charging. Although what's funny is when I visited family in the Philippines last year, I actually got the pop up. It was the first time I was like, "Hey, clean energy charging." So I don't know if it was aware based on my location, but it was like, I'm gonna wait. I just wanted to cap the battery at 80% anyway. So it's like, if I'm turning on clean energy charging purely because I want you to stop at 80% anyway. You know. Aaron Hewitt, thank you for the super chat. Not how the iPhone does things. You can't power on an iPhone without a battery. I know you can't right now, but I'm saying there's a um very simple line of code that they could change, to bypass that. Actually, I'm not entirely sure if that's true, because the iPhone smart battery case did do some software trickery. If you watched, who talked about it? I think it was Renee Ritchie. But the iPhone smart battery case actually had specific code that was designed to. This is why the iPhone smart battery case performed better and was better for your battery health than other battery cases, because Apple's the only one who had access to say, hey, this accessory is made by Apple and it's a battery case, whereas all the other battery cases were just treated as power sources to the iPhone. But with the iPhone smart battery case, you could tell the iPhone to just use power from the external battery, straight from the lightning port, back when the battery case is plugged into the lightning port, and not touch the internal battery in the iPhone. Um, it was a long time ago, because they don't make those battery cases anymore. Now the MagSafe battery pack is inductive, so it doesn't work. But there was, I'm pretty confident, if I'm remembering correctly, those smart battery cases that would occupy the charge port, they would actually just pull power from the external battery, not the internal battery. So um, iPhones were not dying, running out of juice before zero. They were unexpectedly rebooting because the battery couldn't handle the load asked it due to degradation. They ran slower to not reboot. I heard different. I remember that happening, but maybe I'm misunderstanding it. But I actually had a friend at the time that was experiencing the same thing, and it was not rebooting; it was dying. Um, but I'm not denying that also probably happened too. I'm just saying that from my own experience, I recall this happening. And then I remember Samsung having the similar issue later, which was funny because everyone was saying, I remember Apple being mocked for throttling the CPU, but then the Galaxy phones were having the exact same problem. Um, let's see. Action button double and single press feature on iOS 17.1. Oh, already? Interesting. Okay, let me make sure I read everything. Thank you for the super chat. Minimalist Digitalist. Hey, that's Hasael, longtime supporter of the channel. Thank you. That's his first super chat from this account. I remember in middle school, Android users getting bullied by being told, shut up before I take your battery out. I've saw bullying both ways personally. I'm not one of those people that believes all the iOS users bully the Android people. I Bullies are bullies, and I see bullies of all kinds in all walks of life. When I was in school, I was bullied for liking iPhones and Apple products, and I've seen people shame and bully people for having Android. I don't think it's one more so than the other. Uh, it just depends on anecdotal evidence and where your social circle is. Um, What's the exclusive battery feature? Well, it lets you cap your charge limit at 80%, which is something I've been asking for years. And now they let you see your cycle count and your manufacturing date, which I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier. This was kind of cool. Um, Someone has an iPhone 15 and the manufacture date is June of 2023. So during Dub Dub, they manufactured that iPhone, or at least the battery, because it's about the battery, I suppose. But that I think this information will probably affect resale values quite a bit, because now even if your cycle count is low, people are going to know when was this phone manufactured, not just when it came out. Um, I was bullied in school for using an iPhone 4 when my friends were using the 6. Well, bullying is also a very broad term. You know, there's probably some things my friends did to me that others would consider bullying, but I considered teasing because we were just on good terms. I don't think it's a very black and white definition of, oh, that's bullying and that's teasing. Um, I guess if my definition of bullying is when the receiver of it is not comfortable with it. Um, I think if someone's teasing you, then you're laughing along with you. You're in on the joke. But if you're not laughing along with the other people, then it's more bullying. But I guess there's a lot of bullying that goes on between friends too. Uh, People bully kids now for not having Fortnite skins. Are they still playing Fortnite anymore? I don't keep up with this. I don't know what kids are playing. Um, as resistance inside the battery increases, voltage drops from high amperage draw that would cause the device to shut off. That's a problem. Um, Regardless, it was an issue. If you go into the home app on iOS 17 RC, it'll let you know how clean your grid is. There's an energy tab, I believe. Oh, I want to see that. I think I'm on the latest RC. The question is, do I have the home app? Grid forecast. Okay. Um, okay. This has some personal information in here, so I'm not going to read it, but use electricity during cleaner times. It doesn't give me times. It just gives me a little bar graph. But basically, mine lasts until it says cleaner until 5:30 p.m. So from now until 5:30, does it give me the next day? That's cool. But yeah, I guess my energy is clean until 5:30. Interesting. It's funny that I'm on a tiered energy plan. So at certain times of the day, energy is cheaper than other times, and yet the cleaner energy is more expensive. My peak hours are like between noon and 3:30, which is when the home app says I've got cleaner energy, which is kind of funny. Um, you picking the phone up in store? Or you getting it delivered? I'll pick it up in store. Hey Drew, best advice: don't feed the trolls. Just ignore people who bully you. Yeah, I agree. I was picked on and stuff, but I just don't don't hang around those people. Stay away from those people. Um, Can I carry only MagSafe charger for iPhone and travel where MagSafe plug-in 20-watt charger and my watch connect to iPhone C port? Oh, I see what you're asking, Nilesh Moria. That's a great question, actually. I wonder how that would do. I do think if your iPhone is going to be charging another device, it will be more efficient for sure than. I'm glad they didn't do reverse wireless charging. That's so gimmicky. For one, you have to put the phone face down, which makes it kind of hard to use. And also, the magnets aren't aligned properly. They have different polarities. I'm blanking on the word, but the magnets don't attach to each other if you were to put your watch or whatever on the back of the iPhone, and or your AirPods or whatever. And there's so much energy loss during reverse wireless charging on a device that is already not a very big battery. So it would make a lot more sense to do what you're describing, which is, yeah, charge the iPhone via MagSafe and then charge the watch via the USB-C port on the phone. It probably would result in the iPhone charging pretty slowly though, because the iPhone is going to output 4.5 watts, and MagSafe only gets 15 watts to the phone, even though it requires 20 watts from the wall. So, I mean, 15 watts best case scenario. So that would leave you with about 10-watt charging, maybe less. So I guess not ideal, but at least you could use your phone while you're charging your watch. Hypothetically, if I had my iPhone 15, I could do that right now. I charged up my watch because it was dead because I've not been wearing it, but I could plug in the other end of this cable to an iPhone and then leave my iPhone on MagSafe or something. I got a MagSafe puck right off camera here. You'll have to take my word for it. See the sound? I mean, hear the sound? That's MagSafe right there. Um, yeah, I don't know if the battery management system or the power system in the iPhone actually lets it receive and give simultaneously. I don't know. I actually don't know. Um, I haven't seen anyone test that. I haven't seen anyone try that. But yes, I ordered the barely blue regular iPhone 15. It's the latest, but it's not the greatest. It's literally the cheapest iPhone 15 I could find. Mike saying the trolls hate us, so they point that out and create fear. Pretty much. I feel kind of similarly about cyberbullying. As long as there's a block feature on Twitter, just block people that bully you. It's a lot easier to control that, and you can just close the screen. Um, Cyberbullying, I feel a little differently about, because there's always going to be crazy, weird people on the internet that try to make you feel bad, but it's so easy to shut them out. At least I mean, it's harder with in-person bullying because you might be around kids or other people that you don't want to be around, but they're in your class or they're at work and you can't get away from them. But it's very easy to get away from people on the internet, to be honest. I mean, it takes a lot less time to block someone than it does to create a new account. So I've had people that I block and then they make a new account and I just block them again. I can just keep doing that and they give up eventually. Uh, it sounds like a great way to destroy your battery with heat. Yeah, it'd probably degrade the battery a little bit faster, but um, if you, as long as you got that charge limit enabled, right? I could charge my iPhone through my iPad USB-C port while charging the iPad through the Magic Keyboard port, so I think the iPhone thing should work. That's a funny word, should. Is it cyberbullying if I say Mark Gurman has a goofy looking head? Yes, pretty much. I wonder if you can reverse charge your Nintendo Switch OLED with iPhone 15s. I doubt it. I don't know much about the Nintendo Switch, but I'm pretty sure it probably wants a battery. It wants to charge faster than 4.5 watts. I think that's the reason Apple did not advertise or showcase the iPhone charging another iPhone, because 4.5 watts is very slow. I mean, people were complaining about 5 watts on the iPhones when they shipped with the 5 watt charge brick, and 4.5 watts is even slower than that. So, and the batteries are bigger than they were back then. So 5 watts was pretty fast if you had a small battery. Like if you used a 5 watt charge brick on an iPhone SE, that's only like 1,000 milliamp hours. That's not a huge battery. So 5 watts could charge it up pretty quick. But now a lot of phones these days have got 3,000 or 4,000 milliamp hours. Yeah, 5 watts is going to charge that a lot slower. And 4.5 watts is, snail's pace, which is why, yes, your iPhone 15 can charge other iPhones, but I'm guessing not that many people are going to do it. Switch prefers to charge other stuff sometimes, depending on which you plug in first. See, yeah, that's why I thought Apple was going to build in some kind of software interaction. You know how cool the name drop animation is? You hold the phones together and they do the whole. That's the sound they make when you're sharing contact info. They usually have some clean, simple setup, but with the reverse charging feature, no, it's just like, oh, you plug it in. And if you plug it into another iPhone, I don't know. I guess whichever one has the higher state of charge, it will give power to that one. I thought Apple was going to build in a whole pop-up thing. Did you want to give power or share power, and or take power, and you could decide on the phone which direction to send the power. That's what Android does, by the way. I hate to be that guy saying Android has done this for years, but it's true. I remember doing this on Android phones years ago when I reviewed them. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. When you plug in two phones, I would like to tell the phones what to do. I don't want them to guess what I want. Maybe you're comfortable with, some situations I could think of. Maybe they'll take advantage of this in iOS 18 or whatever. iPhone 16 will probably have faster output power or whatever. But let's say one of your friends has a unlimited data plan, and you can use as much 5G ultra wideband speeds as you want, and then maybe you're in an area where you're not using the same network, so your friend has Verizon and you have AT&T, and you don't have good service but he does, and you're using the phone as a hotspot to power a laptop or I don't know, your Switch or some mobile gaming setup, whatever. I don't care if it's gaming, but maybe you need that hotspot. So you're okay with your AT&T phone, which is out of range of any cell towers and you don't have service. You would want that phone to drain all the way and give as much power as possible to the phone with the unlimited data plan. But with the current system in place, where, okay, this phone gives power to this phone if the battery's higher, and then it stops when they hit the equal point, now it's like, okay, now I can't keep charging this phone even though I want this phone to survive. I don't care if this phone survives. Like my AT&T iPhone, that can die, that's fine, but I want the Verizon iPhone to live. But iOS is going to say, no, your AT&T iPhone needs to have a certain amount of battery percentage, and you'd be like, ah. So that's why it would be nice to have the little iOS animation that could pop up and say, hey, let me charge this, please. Let me send power this way, even if it means I'm sacrificing my battery so that someone else's can be higher. Or it could be a situation where it's like a 15 Pro Max, which has a ton of juice. So you want to keep your old well, I guess it's all lightning, so that'll always take it. That's the nice thing. 13 mini, if you're charging it via USB-C on another iPhone, because it's lightning, it'll just keep sucking that power indefinitely. It doesn't matter what the state of charge is of the USB-C iPhone, the lightning iPhone is just going to keep taking it every chance they can. Can you charge my phone, Apple? Well, yes, but no, I don't think you should. Yeah, that's pretty much what they're going to say. Yes, it can charge another iPhone, but should it? Or should you buy our MagSafe battery pack that we just discontinued? I usually like Android does it when sharing power, you can charge it in the notification part. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, they did come out with USB-C earpods. Actually, I think they even mentioned that at the keynote, which was kind of surprising. I didn't think they would. Not having reverse charging for AirPods MagSafe is a disappointment for me, as the iPhone can reverse charge the MagSafe battery accessory, but that has a different polarity. The magnets aren't the same. The MagSafe battery pack is the opposite polarity of the iPhone magnets. That's why the MagSafe battery pack can snap onto the back and hold on. It's the same magnetic ring that's in the MagSafe cases. The clear case and the silicone case and leather the leather MagSafe cases, they have a different polarity on the magnet so they can attach to the iPhone, whereas this is an AirPods Pro 2. But if you had an AirPods with MagSafe on the back, that is designed to attach to the puck and stick on, whereas it's not designed to stick on. There's two similar magnets, so they kind of are inverse of each other when you try to put it on the iPhone. And also, there's so much power loss with that, and your iPhone has to be face down. And frankly, I think people need to charge their iPhone more than they need to charge their AirPods. So the likelihood of you being in a situation where your iPhone is at high state of charge and your AirPods are at low state of charge, to me, is not that common. But thankfully, with USB-C, you'll be able to charge your AirPods and just keep using your phone. You'll just have a cable hanging out of it, and the AirPods can be plugged in and charging or whatever, and you're just using your phone like normal, opposed to just sitting it flat on a table, trying to get the glass and everything lined up properly, and now you just sit around. Or I guess maybe you use your phone like this and you try to hold the AirPods perfectly in place the whole time. but that's kind of gimmicky. And when you're moving it around, you're losing power loss. So there's a reason why they don't support it, in my opinion. I think it makes a lot of sense actually to not support it. I can't fathom using my phone to charge another device. Well, because the phone battery is so small, if you are going to do it, it does make sense to charge over a wire, in my opinion, because with an iPhone battery being so small, you don't want to have a ton of power losses. Um, with other technologies, it's not as important because you have so much battery life anyway. But just charge your AirPods before you leave the house. It's not that hard. The case lasts a long time. I don't charge my AirPods every day. These things, I mean, it depends, I guess, how much you use them, but these have like a 24-hour battery life, whereas most of our phones are like what, 6 to 10 hour screen on time. So, in my opinion, it's far more likely that your iPhone is going to need to charge before your AirPods do. Um, can you explain your comments on the Black Pro Max titanium being prone to scratching? My comments? You're Brandon. You're asking like I've already made comments. I think all the titaniums look like they're prone to scratching. Yeah, it's kind of a disappointment so far. I see with that PYD coating they used with the titanium, it feels very easy for them to collect oils and fingerprints, and very easy. I've seen many people scratch them already. So yeah, I kind of agree with what Randy's been saying on Twitter. It feels very much like the pros were kind of a disappointment this year. That's part of the reason I didn't pre-order one. I knew that there was going to be a million channels all reviewing them, and I didn't really see that much the pros had going for them that would stand out to me. So I was like, you know what? I haven't reviewed the entry level iPhone in a long time, so I think I'm just gonna try out the entry level. I haven't done that in a while. I think the iPhone 11 was the last time I reviewed the entry level model, or I guess I did review the 12 mini when that came out. But I got both. I got the iPhone 11 and the 11 Pro Max, and then I got the 12 mini and the 12 Pro Max. I've never just reviewed the entry model and skipped the pros in a while. So yeah, I just think aluminum is a great color option. The only complaint I have about the entry level iPhones, I love the aluminum, the matte finish. They don't really pick up that many oils and smudges that easily. I haven't cleaned this phone and it still looks pretty pristine to me. Aluminum is lightweight, it's cheap, it can be recycled, and it looks nice, but my only complaint is the glossy glass, that picks up all the fingerprints, and the iPhone 15 fixed that. The entry level model got the frosted glass back now. So I'm kind of like, hey, they got the 48 megapixel sensor, they got Type C, they got dynamic island, they got the new brightness. They now get just as bright as the Pro iPhones. I was kind of I was kind of impressed, I'll admit. The regular iPhone 15s were more impressive to me than the pros. The pros didn't stand out to me that much. I was kind of like, it seems very marketing friendly. Like that titanium looks so futuristic and clean on the website, but then any real world picture I see of the titanium, I'm like, huh? It was exactly what I thought was going to happen too. Is the same thing happened with the Apple Watch when Apple first started showing titanium Apple Watches, not the Ultra, but before that they showed all of these grooves and all these lines on the chassis, and it looked kind of like this brushed raw metal. And then I got the titanium watch in person, and I was like, it doesn't look like that. The marketing makes it look way. The marketing made it look way more raw and bare and groovy, and then you see it in person, and it just looks like a different shade of aluminum. Um, I wasn't I wasn't that impressed. Uh, I mean, obviously, I like ProMotion, but we've had that for several generations, and I knew that the pros were going to get higher speed USB-C, but I really wanted Apple to do something more with it. I was kind of disappointed with. I mean, for one, there was talk, partly from Ming Chi Kuo, that probably got our hopes too high. I'll admit, we got too excited for it, but there was talk of Thunderbolt coming to the iPhone. And that got me excited because I knew that Thunderbolt couldn't just be for faster data transfer speeds. I was like, they are not going to just put Thunderbolt on there for the sake of faster data transfer, because the read and write speed is only, you know, 5-6 gigabits per second, and Thunderbolt does 40 gigabits per second. So why do you need read and write speed Why do you need Thunderbolt if unless you're doing something special with it? You come up with some other use case, some other feature. Usually, Apple doesn't just implement a faster tech spec. They can't just do here's a periscope lens. They have to do here's the tetra prism that allows for super zoom or whatever. Apple has to brand it their own thing. So I thought, okay, if there's Thunderbolt coming to the iPhone, it's got to have some kind of special external monitor support, something like Apple Dex or maybe even full on Mac OS or Stage Manager of some kind, and you can plug in your iPhone to the big monitor. That's what I thought was coming, and they didn't really do much with it. It was basically just like, okay, it's USB 3, which is fast. And yeah, now you can record videos straight to an external drive, but I don't find that particularly useful personally because the main reason I do that, I have one plugged into my MacBook right now. Let me eject it so I can show you. Um, I record my videos to this with my Blackmagic camera, but can I tell you why? The reason I record my videos straight to this is because I don't want to have to take the camera off of the tripod every time I'm done recording and have to plug it in directly or fumble around with an adapter for an SD card or a CFast card reader. So I want to leave the camera up there. But an iPhone, sure, it's got a great camera, but I'm going to take an iPhone off the tripod anyway because that's also my phone. I'm not using my iPhone as exclusively a camera. Yes, I would use the camera a lot, but I'm also going to take it off because I got to text people on that. I got to call people. I got to airdrop things. I'm going to make my video thumbnails on that. So when I'm done recording a video with my iPhone, I'm not going to leave it on the tripod and just disconnect the drive. I'm going to take the whole thing. So if I've got the ability to import files through a USB-C port, I'm just going to take the whole phone and plug it into the computer. I don't see how this saves me that many steps or time. I guess you just have more external storage to work with, but I I don't know. I wasn't running out of storage in the first place. I think a terabyte on a phone is already kind of crazy, and they already support that. I guess ProRes fills it up faster, but in my experience, ProRes does not make a substantial difference. The only people who notice the differences between ProRes and HEVC are the type of people that don't record things with iPhones. They're more cinemaphiles that pay attention to pixel peeping, and those people are going to have far more complaints about the iPhone than about the ProRes video recording. They're the kind of people that are going to pay more attention to the lenses and the bokeh and the attachments and the filters, which the iPhone doesn't have because it's just a smartphone camera. So it's kind of like the original HomePod to me. It's like, okay, you're pitching features to audiophiles, but you don't have audiophile connectivity. You have average consumer connectivity. But you're charging audiophile pricing, which is why the average consumers aren't that interested in it. It's this weird pitch. You're taking some things from the pros, but also relying on average consumers being somewhat unaware, which is how I feel about the ProRes feature. I tried it. I got a phone that supported it specifically so that I could try it, and I did side by sides, and I tried the color correction, and I just was like, it's still an iPhone camera, so it can only be so good. Honestly, ProRes, in my opinion, just fills up the phone a lot faster and doesn't really look all that different. It looks a little different, but it's so slight. And I'm like, okay, if you notice those kinds of things, you're the kind of person that's probably not filming things on an iPhone. Um, Michael Corcoran says we'll probably see Samsung add some kind of capacitive button again. Zenfone 9 and 10 have that. Many others in the past will see a resurgence of copycats for a capacitive custom button. Why? What's the point? Like, if your argument is water resistance, the buttons aren't what's lacking water resistance, for the record. The limiting factors preventing better water resistance are usually the speakers and the microphones, not the in the charge port, not the buttons. That usually just complicates things. Now you got to add in more haptic engines and that stuff. Minimalist Digitalist says, would I rather get a Pro Mini iPhone or an 18-inch Pro MacBook? Ooh, I really like the idea of a Pro MacBook. So yeah, probably that. I still feel like my MacBook screen is kind of small, even though I have the biggest one. I still feel like I'm filling up screen space from time to time. Probably not that many people would buy it, but I would like a bigger MacBook. Um, let's see. Now the regular 15s are way better along with the 2x camera button and other stuff. It's honestly kind of disappointing how um how much better the digital zoom is with a 48 megapixel sensor. Because what I realized that Apple was showcasing with the newer iPhones all rocking that 48 megapixel sensor is that when you pinch to zoom in, you don't have that really obnoxious switch to the telephoto. You know, when you zoom in and then you cut to the telephoto lens, you get this, you get the slight perspective change and the lighting changes and it gets way more grainy and noisy. And with the 48 megapixel sensor, you zoom in and it's just smooth and gradual. And people don't like acknowledge, well, it's not a real telephoto lens. Okay, compare the two. Get an iPhone with a 2x telephoto and then look at the new iPhones with a 2x digital crop. I bet you the digital crop is actually better because usually when you do a telephoto lens, it comes at the cost of the aperture. So it's not as good at letting in low light. Usually the sensor is also smaller. So yes, while technically you could have had a secondary lens with your 7 Plus or your iPhone 10s or your 8 Plus, those have a 2x telephoto, but I bet all of those telephoto lenses still perform worse than just cropping in on a big 48 megapixel sensor. So it's kind of a tough pill to swallow because a lot of us like to think that, oh well, telephoto lens being dedicated to a lens is way better. That's always going to give you a better, that's not digital cropping. But it's like, yeah, but if the sensor behind that telephoto lens isn't very good, then it kind of doesn't matter. Would the 3x crop from the 48 megapixel be better than the 3x telephoto? I don't know. I guess we'll have to compare. My guess is not substantially, but I think it'll be a toss up personally. I think if you compare the two, it'll probably be not that different. I don't think it'll be substantially noticeable. Um, let's see. I'm considering to get my first Apple Watch active at sports. Not sure if the Apple Watch Ultra 2 would fit or the Apple Watch Ultra 1 used would be better bang for your buck. The Apple Watch Ultra 1 is absolutely going to be better bang for your buck. I feel very confident right now telling you the second gen Ultra is not worth it. It's so insanely similar. They did not change very much at all. And the only people who should be buying it are the people that are not on the fence, which is why I'm okay saying that. Because if you know for a fact that the Apple Watch Ultra 2 has some specific feature that you absolutely need, then you're not going to listen to me. So I accept that. I'm accepting that if you're on the fence, you don't need the second gen. Because the only people who do know exactly why. If you don't know why you need the second gen, then you don't need it. If you're up for debate. Do I think Apple will bring the option to set a default focal length on the 15 Pro to the 14 Pro? I hope so. That's another situation of hardware gating. It feels very possible that they could have added that, but you never know because sometimes Apple can do their crazy, like, well, you need this one silicon, you need this certain chip. Some things they don't bring down to the older iPhones, even though they definitely could. Like we remembered the um the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max both supported ProRes video recording on a A15 chip. So we knew it was possible for the A15 chip to do ProRes. And they didn't bring that to the regular uh but you could argue they couldn't bring it to the regular 13 and 13 mini because it didn't have the right RAM or the same amount of GPU cores or whatever. But then they gave the exact same A15 chip with the same GPU cores and the same RAM as the 13 Pros. They gave the exact same chip to the regular iPhone 14. But the regular iPhone 14 did not get ProRes, probably because it's a Pro feature, right? So we don't give it to the non-Pro iPhone, even though all of the silicon and cameras and hardware was there to do a ProRes recording. It's a video and codec. It doesn't have anything to do with the lenses. So they could have added ProRes and they didn't. So in my head, that means that there's a very real chance that they could leave some camera features exclusive to the 15 purely because it's the new Pro iPhone. The most criminal thing was not bringing action mode to the 13 Pro, even though it had the same lens and chip as the regular 14. They probably could have, but I think the argument was that the new 14s had this next generation accelerometer and gyroscope, which is how they're able to do crash detection and uh, car crash detection and what was the other thing? Action mode. So they used their next generation accelerometers, but yeah, you're right. They have the same silicon on the inside, so that's not a great argument. Um, I've never, to be honest, when I had the 14, I never even used action mode. It seems kind of gimmicky to me, but I'm just happy they brought high efficiency max to the 14 Pros, 14 megapixel. How do I pronounce that? Heaf looks so good and doesn't have the downside of taking long to capture like Pro Raw does. Yeah, I think that's kind of the reality of most smartphone photography. Like, yes, I know that when you're a videographer or a photographer, there is a huge difference between RAW and HEIF, or the high efficiency image format, whatever it's called. But the point is, a smartphone camera is so small, even with these giant camera bumps now, it's so relatively small that there's not enough detail in that sensor for you to notice obvious differences between HEIF and ProRAW. Like, it's the same way that bringing lossless support to AirPods is kind of overkill and unnecessary, because the drivers and the tweeters and the woofers and everything involved in the AirPods, whatever it's called, they're not articulate enough to really speak the lossless language, if you will. Um, yeah, I think someone at the event said HEIF, which I'd never heard before. So I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to refer to that as HEIF instead of HEIF. But with iPhone, with any smartphone photography or videography, the difference between ProRes recording or Pro Raw and HEIF is so small. It's so insignificant. Pro Raw is overrated. I don't know why we didn't have HEIF until a year later, but happy nonetheless. I think it's, to me, it's purely marketing. Like, it sounds cooler to say that the iPhone is supporting Pro Raw photos and ProRes video. That sounds impressive because it's like, wow, they're doing the same codec as these professional cameras, but it's more of an education in what difference does that actually make in the real world. Because in my opinion, the main limiting factor preventing iPhone photos or videos from getting better, it's not the file format that it's recorded to, it's not the resolution or the frame rate. Like, oh, does it support 8K, does it support 12K recording? They probably could fit a 12K video mode on there if they really wanted to, but the point is, it wouldn't result in a major difference. You couldn't see it. It wouldn't translate into a better video. Because at the end of the day, you're still working with a very tiny sensor, which is why, in my experience, even an older iPhone 11 camera, the pictures and videos still look great. They're still very sharp. They they still look, in my opinion, good enough for a phone. If you care that much about something, you're more likely to be not using a phone camera. But it's good enough for a camera that fits in your pocket, which I've felt the same way about all cameras from the past 4 or 5 years. I don't see substantially like, oh, you need to get this phone because it has this one really important camera feature. It's like, you can't really tell the difference anyway. What would prevent me to get a 15 would be the lack of macro capabilities. Macro is fun, but I found myself not using it all that much when I had my 13 Pro Max. And also, it annoys me when a lot of the time you're trying to take a picture of something with a main sensor, but then you get too close and then it always wants to jump to macro, and the macro looks way softer and noisier. And you're like, nope, nope, not macros. So you had to keep turning it off manually with the little flower icon. Like, stop it. No macro. So I would honestly prefer just a main sensor that lets you get closer, I guess. Using RAW or not depends on the person. I like photography. Post processing is definitely better. Yeah, it depends on the person, I guess. But my point is, the people who notice those kinds of differences between the Pro RAW and the high efficiency, if you pay that close attention to pictures, you're probably not using an iPhone for those kinds of pictures. Um, yeah, they still have the old ultra wides on the non pros. I don't know about the 15, but the regular 14 has the same sensor as the iPhone 11. And it shows, by the way, I can tell. And I don't think they changed it on the Pros either. Um, the 15 Pro still has the same sensor for the ultra wide, which I've been not amazed with. I mean, it's fine. It's cool when you're in a well lit environment. The ultra wide is a nice to have, but it's still very noticeable when you switch to it. Like, anytime I switch to center stage with my iPhone using continuity camera, it's immediately everyone starts complaining because the main sensor just looks so much better. It lets in so much light. It's so much sharper. And then when you switch to ultra wide, everyone goes, ugh, ugh, ugh. Okay, there's a bunch of noise and it looks grainy and it looks worse. And Um, do I think the SE4 was just another iPhone 8 or a 10-ish display? Everyone keeps saying, what is the SE4 going to be? What's the SE4 going to be? And the rumors have been pretty consistent about it. Everyone is saying that the SE4 is basically just going to be an iPhone 13 with USB-C. That's really it. There hasn't been any talk about a mini iPhone design coming back or a, a home button iPhone sticking around. It's always just been the SE tends to be an iPhone that was cheap to build and that they built tons of. It's usually not discontinued models. So now that they've stopped selling mini iPhones, I have very little hope that there's going to be a mini iPhone for the SE again. I think the SE is probably just going to look like a basic notched iPhone 13 with a maybe one camera instead of two on the back and a slightly older chip like an A15. So again, it's just an iPhone 13 with USB-C, which sounds cool, by the way. I would be fine with that. I might even hold out if I'm not that impressed with the 15. I might just wait for an SE4. But I wish they would go smaller, of course. I would like there to be a smaller iPhone, but sounds like they're not selling all that great. Um, thank God they have the toggle as well for it. Pretty helpful for that situation. Oh, for the macro stuff? Yeah, they didn't always have one. That was at launch there wasn't a way to turn off the macro switching. And I found out through a Marquez video, Apple issued a statement to Marquez saying, yes, we will add a feature that lets you turn that off later. So it took them a minute, but will you please stop claiming that the iPad should die, Drew? When did I ever say it should die? I don't think find that quote. I said iPad OS should be better. Sorry for asking for more, but I don't think I've ever once said the iPad should die. Uh, does continuity camera work with an iPhone 14 and iPad Pro? No. See, perfect example. iPads don't support continuity camera because they're iPads, but Mac OS does. Just another reason that I would like to have a Mac OS on the iPad. It's all software limitations. Not much wrong with iPad hardware. Tons of things wrong with iPad software. I love how a week and a half later you still haven't made an Apple Watch 9 and Ultra 2 video. I was thinking about making one today, but I wasn't sure how much time I was going to have. And I was like, you know what? I haven't done it a live stream since Friday. And that was kind of a crazy stream because we were pre-ordering and stuff. So I was like, I want to do one today. But now that you mention it, my Apple Watch is almost all the way charged up. Let me put it back on. See how weird it feels. Ugh. I want to try I've never actually used the double tap thing, but I just want to remind everybody, I do not have a Series 9. I do not have an Apple Watch Ultra 2 or 1. I don't have an Ultra of any kind. But there is a feature called, I think, Assistive Touch. Oh yeah, tvOS got continuity camera before the iPad. I think technically watchOS already has continuity camera because if you open the camera app on the watch, it just shows you the iPhone camera. Isn't that basically continuity? Anyway. Oh, I'm getting a notification. Check your account. Okay. I don't care about security. Stop asking. Let me get to the Apple Watch app. Um, Minimalist Digitalist is so upset that I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I'll be honest, it feels weird. I've gotten used to not wearing it now, and quick actions in accessibility settings. Thank you. Where is that? Quick actions on assistive touch. Oh, interesting. So I'm looking at these. Will assistive touch drain much more battery? I don't know. Probably. Oh, assistive touch. I'm going to turn it on. Allows you to navigate Apple Watch using one-handed gestures. That's what it's called. And hand gestures on. Pinch means forwards, double pinch, backwards. I'm sorry, this just makes me laugh. I know what they're referring to, but clench means tap. Double clench means action menu. So now, ooh, when you bring up the display, you get the little. Did you see that? You get the little blue line around the screen. Watch this. Zoom. So it knows it's just a little subtle way to remind you, okay, assistive touch is working. So I'm going to tap. Wait, maybe do I need to be in something? Let me figure out. I know how to make it work first. Action gesture, double clench. It worked. That was cool. Wait, what happens if I do it on the home screen? Clench. Listen. Oh, it vibrated. Oh, here we go. Now I got the things highlighted here, the widgets. So if I, it's hard to show you this. It's really easy when I do this. It keeps, why did you tap? What the heck? It's not listening. Oh, I want to hold it like this, but then the screen shows up. Um, don't use assistive touch. Okay, I won't. Turn that off. Hand gestures. Is that what it's called? Visual signal. Ultra 2, 30,000 nits would be useful for flashlight for caves, ocean, or late at night. And again, if you're doing those kinds of things, a dedicated flashlight is going to be so much better than doing this the whole time. It can't sustain 3,000 nits for that long. Don't try to convince yourself that 2,000 nits isn't bright enough. That's insane. That's so bright. Um, yeah, I could try desk view if that worked. Quick actions on and assistive touch off is better. Okay. I'm glad I have you here. Quick actions on, assistive touch off with, he said, hand gestures. Listen to me. Boom, boom. Huh. Sleep on wrist down. No, turn that off. There you go. We need 4,000 nits. Manual scanning, auto scanning. Motion pointer. What? That's cool. I gotta play around with this more. I like it for pausing my music without needing to touch anything. Maybe I should try playing something. Pinch means forwards. Perform this gesture after the display. I'm clenching. No, don't clench your hand. My brother has the A12Z Pro. He's so annoyed with no external monitor support. I feel bad for all those people. They were so close to the iPad, but then Apple just keeps hardware gating things. Quick Actions is literally enabling the Series 9 feature. Double tap. It's in accessibility settings. I'm just trying to make it work, but apparently it's not available on launch with the Series 9 either, so. Eh. So look, help me out with this. There's a try it out button in the quick actions menu. Let me turn it back on. Appearance, full, minimal. I didn't get the try it out option. Or at least it's not coming back. So they make it complicated to get to work on the older watches, and then they'll make it simple to use on the new watches. That makes sense. We both have a limit. You can just do quick actions itself, and you can do double tap for play, pause, and other stuff. I can't get it to activate, even though I have it. Before, it only worked when I had assistive touch turned on. Huh. There. Okay. Here we go. Does this work? Da-da! I'm scrolling! Yay. It's working. Double tap. Double tap. Double tap. What if I tap once? That goes down. Good. All apps. Here, look at this. Tap once. Tap once. Well, now it's probably confused because I'm not pointing it the right way. There we go. Clench. Clench. Yeah, home screen. Double tap. Are you selecting something? Oh, yeah. It's highlighting certain apps. It's kind of hard to see, but hello. It's highlighting mail. There we go. Here, watch this. Watch this. Okay, now activity. Now workouts. Now settings. Now stopwatch. Calendar. World clock. Ta-da. Now I'm going to open world clock. So I'm going to clench. And it opens it. Can I use your location? No. Open that. Clench again. Scroll. There you go. Ta-da. Just get the Series 9, bro. Just spend $500 and get the exact same thing. Duh. This is not the Series 9. You can do this. This is a Series 7, just for the record, just so we're clear. I do not have the new watch. Information. Why doesn't it make it easy to see which version Apple Watch you have? About. Whatever. You know what? I'll just take it off. Tyler Forte says, hi, I'm not at work yet. Good. On the back here, you can see it's kind of sweaty, I know, but this is a Series 7 feature. My iPhone, I don't think is shipped yet, but imagine if I looked on the back and it said Series 9. I'd be like, what the heck? Caven says, my iPhone is still preparing for shipment. That's totally normal. They usually don't ship them until the day before, because next day shipping is the best way to ensure everybody gets them at the same time. Double tap isn't coming launch day for Series 9, so will you get another one later? Try it at the Apple Store. I don't think I'll get any of them. I just did it, basically. I just got the double tap. What do you mean it's not coming till launch day? I just tried it. It works on my 2-year-old Apple Watch Series 7. Someone earlier was asking, Series 7 or Series 9? 7. I can't recommend anybody buy the Series 9 personally. I don't think you need it. Don't listen to Apple saying, oh, you need that super bright display. This display gets plenty bright. You can read it in broad daylight just fine. I'm doing it right now, actually. There's some sunlight coming in from the window, and the screen is very bright. I don't imagine why you would want it to be any brighter, but now I'm just going to play around with the clenching. I can select, double select. Ooh, press crown. Look at that. Can select different options. Scrolling through. Sorry, it's upside down. It'd be easier if I recorded a video with this, but I wanted to familiarize myself with it. Will I check out the 15 Pros while they're at the store? Maybe make a YouTube short about them? Well, maybe, I guess. I mean, I'll look at them so I can talk to you guys about what I think of the colors in person, but what do I say in the short? Look! Another video of 15 Pros. It's not like you haven't seen 8 million of these. I don't know. I feel like I don't have much to say about them, but I will probably try one out later in the year when they finally roll out spatial video. I don't want to review one right now because I'm probably not going to keep it. So if I'm not going to keep it, I'm not going to get to try out all the features when spatial video support comes out. So I'll wait for spatial video and then try it or something. How come I wasn't at the Apple event? Because I'm not invited. And I'm Apple's worst enemy, to be honest with you. I was thinking about that. The only thing worse than someone telling you to buy an Android instead of an iPhone. The only thing worse than that is someone telling you to keep your old iPhone, because that's Apple's true competition. Apple's not losing that many sales to Android phones. You know what they are losing sales to? Keeping your old iPhone, because your old iPhone still works and still functions. So, because I push a narrative on this channel that is supporting you can get by with less, you don't need to upgrade, keep your old iPhone, that's horrible for Apple. That's basically endorsing their worst enemy. They lose far more sales to old iPhones than they do Android. Um, so wolf in sheep's clothing. Also, if I was invited, I wouldn't go because I have far more fun live streaming my reaction to the event. Easiest way to get blacklisted. Well, I do everything you should probably do to get blacklisted. Make low quality content, make fun of their executive staff, um, make jokes about how bad or how inappropriate or how stupid the new iPhones are, and tell you to keep your old iPhone. Um, I'm doing everything you shouldn't do to get invited to Apple events. So I don't think they'll invite me ever, and even if they do, I wouldn't go, because honestly, it's far more fun for me to do live streams. I'm not really a big event guy. I don't like concerts. I don't like big crowds. Um, I prefer watching things from home. I don't even like really going to the movie theater. I prefer to watch things at my living room TV because I can pause it and I can use subtitles, and I'm just not like a big, oh, let's go in person. I'm not that kind of guy. Um, and honestly, just to be completely frank, I make more money when I live stream my reactions. I wouldn't make that much money from going in person. I'd probably have to spend more money to get there and everything. Uh, let's see. Apple Watch Series 3 gang. My wife is part of that gang. She's still rocking the Series 3. I don't know how she does it. Um, TSF says, I like the direction you're taking the channel with the emphasis on minimizing consumerism and being happy with what you got. Resub. I like that resubbed because it implies you were subbed and then you left and now you're back. One word and I know so much more. You also rip Google and Samsung so they won't see you as a potential defector. Well, they're not worried about that. Like I just said, I don't think Apple's enemy, their biggest threat is not Samsung or Google. That's not who they're missing out revenue to. Their biggest potential revenue loss is you not upgrading. At least the people who are pushing you to buy a new Pixel or a new Galaxy phone, those people, they're at least convincing you that you should spend $1,000+ on your phone. Apple probably has a better chance at convincing those people to buy a newer iPhone because they're spending way too much money on phones anyway. The real enemy is people like me who are telling you not to spend that much money on new phones and to buy phones used and refurbished. That's horrible for them. And they're losing out on their iPhone's biggest competitor is last year's iPhone. I'm not the one who invented that expression. That's been said for a long time now. Um, I'll see you in the next one. It is time. I'm still an Apple sheep. I'm still using all Apple products. I still prefer Apple software, but sheep are dumb. Sheep go in different directions. Sheep don't always follow the leader. So that's why I think the term Apple sheep is perfect. I'm usually not telling you don't buy an iPhone, go buy an Android. I'm telling you don't buy an iPhone, use an older iPhone, or, try to get by with your existing one. That's, I'm still team Apple, but um I am blind. Is the new charging cable Type C on the back from the block side at the wall or normal for new iPhone? Okay, I'm trying to understand what you're asking. The USB-C cable that comes with the iPhone is white, and the USB-C port is in the same place as the Lightning port, and they don't include a charge brick. So Drew Pickett says, how much debt you in? Thankfully, zero, which I'm very grateful to talk about. I don't have rent, and I don't have a mortgage, and I have no credit card debt and no student loan debt. I got rid of all debt, actually, which I'm very proud of. What would make you upgrade every year? How can they increase the revenue if it's very worth it to just keep what you already have? How can they increase their revenue if it's very worth it to keep what you have? because everybody's at a different upgrade cycle. You know, there's some people that are still using, I know someone in my personal life that is still using an iPhone 6. So someone like her is going to be more interested in upgrading than someone who's rocking an iPhone 14, obviously, because if you just upgraded a year ago. So I personally think Apple can live off of the revenue of just a certain percentage of the public upgrading once every 5 to 6 years. um, they make their money from those people, and then those people are set and they're happy for another 5 6 years. uh, yeah, Tim needs to hit me with the shepherd's crook. That's the thing. When people ask me what would make me upgrade every year, I don't know. I can't give you an answer, and neither can Apple. So that's why I'm not. That's why I didn't upgrade to the 14, and that's why I don't really plan on keeping the 15. Is just because I can't think of anything, and neither can they. So that's the impossible question. Apple's probably trying to think of things. What can we do to convince more people to upgrade? But sometimes there isn't always an answer. You know, there isn't always a solution. When a piece of technology has matured and has just kind of figured out all of the things it's good at, and it just continues to stay that way, there's not enough. How do I build enough cash? You just try to keep your expenses in check. It's by using the 4-year-old iPhone. It's by selling the iPad. I mean, it's not those things exclusively, but obviously your guys' generosity has helped out a lot. I got a lot of great support from you guys over the years with your super chats, and I don't take those for granted. For the record, I don't expect you guys. I would do these live streams if no one super chatted. By the way, I enjoy just the back and forth. I enjoy just getting to know people and getting to talk about this stuff. And because I don't want to take your super chats or your memberships for granted and just assume, those guys, I'm entitled. They should just be paying me all the time. I'm always going to get super chats and everybody's always going to send me money. I don't think that way. I think, wow, how generous of them to give me those donations. Now I want to make sure I make the best possible use of those donations so that I can continue doing this no matter what happens. Even if it means making videos and making content that doesn't necessarily perform that great for the algorithm, and I don't get a ton of views or watch time from a lot of that content, I don't care. I just want to make sure I can keep doing this. So that involves a lot of budgeting, making sure that we don't spend without thinking. Um, it means eating a lot more from home, buying groceries that are at good rates and good prices, and not eating out all the time. That's a sure way to inflate your budget. Food is the trickiest one, honestly, because you can't cut it out. You can't just stop. I cut out memberships. You know, we stopped paying for Netflix and Amazon Prime, and um, what was the other one? I don't think we ever paid for Disney Plus, but yeah, we don't pay for pretty much any streaming services. So we cut out the memberships as best we can. We didn't buy a super lavish, fancy house. We didn't buy like a huge, expensive house. We got a modest house, which is fine. It's not a huge mansion or anything, and it's not in a populated area. Like it's not in a major city or anything. We're in a rural area, but it's because I value my time, my flexibility, and the ability to make content that might not necessarily perform great for the algorithm. I value that more than having a expensive, fancy lifestyle or living in a big city. That's not as important to me as the relationships, the people, that the friendships you make along the way. So I'm uh I'm all in favor of you budgeting and trying to figure out how to live with less and how to get by with less. We downgraded our iCloud and all that. So there's never like one thing. Here's the way how you get rid of all debt or how to pay off your house early. That kind of stuff. I make a pretty middle class income. I did a video on the Tailosive Life channel called How Much I Make on YouTube. If you're curious, that video is still pretty accurate. I wouldn't say it's much different from what I'm making now. I'm not I'm not making six figures, by the way. I'm not making some crazy. I'm living on, in my opinion, a fairly modest paycheck, but every dollar I get, we invest best I can, and we keep our expenses as low as possible. So we're not spending more than we need to, and that involves a lot of not buying the latest and greatest and skipping things and saying, you know what, I don't think I need that. And that's how you're able to unlock all of this great freedom and flexibility in life, where I'm able to make a YouTube income, which is very unreliable, and some months of the year it's like this and other months it's like this, and it's all over the place, and it's nothing's guaranteed. You don't know if you're going to have videos perform great forever or if they're going to stagnate. You don't know, but we can make a living off of it because we've kept our budget in check. So I think probably way too many YouTube channels are obsessed and too focused on revenue, but not thinking too much about profitability, which is important if you want to live off of it. You need to be able to make more than what you're spending. But a lot of channels just they take all the money they make and then they pour it all back into the business, and because they want it to grow and they want it to get bigger. So okay, I got a new paycheck, and I did this too, by the way, rookie mistake of mine in earlier in my YouTube career is just like, okay, this is how much I made, that's how much I can spend. So I'm going to blow all my money on all this stuff as quickly as I can because I'm putting it back into the business without even really thinking about it. Does the business necessarily need you to wear the newest Apple Watch every year? Does the business not work if you only buy new iPhones and constantly use them? Or can you make videos about older tech and about not upgrading and about living with less? And can those videos still do well too? That's kind of the funny thing. My best video this year in terms of performance was actually on living with the iPhone 10. It was about living with the 6-year-old iPhone. So by downgrading my phone, I actually had videos perform better than when I would upgrade my phone every year. And because I'm downgrading and I sold off my old phone, the profitability of that video is off the charts. So even from day one, before I even hit publish on that video, I already made some money on it because I sold my 13 Pro Max off. So I don't have that phone anymore. I've already sold it and gotten some money back for it. Now I get to make a video about switching to the older iPhone, and that video ends up performing better than the videos about the new iPhone. It's kind of interesting how people don't necessarily think about how I guess more everyday people might be thinking. I think the logic makes sense that there's a lot of people that want to upgrade their phone, but they're not interested in buying the latest and greatest. Okay, I can't drop $1,000 on a phone, but maybe I'll drop a couple $100. So I'll consider a used phone, whether it's a 10 or an 11 or something. And so if I'm considering upgrading to a used iPhone, I want to see how is that used iPhone performing today. So the videos about living with iPhone 10 or living with iPhone SE kind of helps people make that decision. That maybe they're still rocking an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 6S or something, and they're thinking, okay, I don't have the resources, or maybe I just don't have the interest in dropping that much on a brand new iPhone. So let's see, how is the iPhone 10 or how's the SE2? How is that doing today? How is that doing in 2023, which is what the title was, Living with iPhone 10 in 2023. And that video did very well because I think there were a lot of people just curious, like, can I still get by with a phone that costs, you can get an iPhone 10 now for like $200, probably less, which is still a great phone, honestly. My wife is still using the iPhone 10. She's happy with it. Yeah, it's a shame it doesn't get iOS 17, but honestly, a lot of the features aren't that big a deal. So um, I was during my best moments this year. Brings back memories. Oh, geez. Yeah, it's 6 years old now. Is September usually your most profitable month, if you don't mind me answering? You'd think it would be. Generally, yes, but I don't know what it is. For some reason, I tend to get my best months in around November, October, sometimes December. But I think a lot of it has to do with CPMs. Like in the winter months, December is usually when advertisers are spending the most amount of money because it's holiday season, so everybody's shopping. So I might get more views in September, but I'll make more in December because of the ad revenue that's being spent on YouTube and stuff. Um, let's see. Michael Corcoran says, and this is a new world because 5 years ago you didn't have the option of buying a 5-year-old iPhone and having it work seamlessly. Yeah, that's true because I mean it's just obvious to me. It's just being honest that iPhone upgrades are not as big as they used to be. And I think channels that are trying to deny that reality are just being dishonest. They're not being honest to their audience and they're not being honest to themselves. Like, sure, I'm a techie and I can tell you all the differences between the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro about the transfer speeds and the milliamp hours and the A17 Pro versus the A16 chip and the bionics and the sensors and the tetra prism lenses. I can list all of those differences. But then when I come into the real world and I realize, okay, my cousin or my wife or my mom or my grandma is asking me, I need a new phone. My old phone isn't working that well anymore, or the camera's not that great, or the display is acting up. I want to get a new phone. Am I going to tell her that the 15 Pro is really going to help her that much more than the 14 Pro or the 13 Pro or the 12 Pro? She doesn't care about all that stuff. Most of the world doesn't care about all that stuff. So just being transparent with your audience about, hey, the last few generations of iPhone aren't that different. So you can find used ones that are incredibly, incredibly cheaper than the new ones that give you 90% of the same experience. I think that's just honesty. I think if I was trying to convince my grandma that she needs 120 hertz or that she needs a 5x telephoto lens, I would be lying to her. I would be dishonest. That would be weird. That would be very, you know, car salesman esque, just trying to trick people or trying to pressure people into feeling like they need to buy the latest and greatest things, which I feel bad about because I'm worried that in the past, when my channel was more about just buy, 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 always get the latest and greatest thing, I know that that's a lot of how my channel was founded. Um, I still, it keeps me up at night sometimes because I worry that I was a negative influence on people. I worried that by pushing that narrative of pushing that, oh, you need this, or I need 120 hertz, or I need telephoto lens, or I need ProRes, by emphasizing that, was I influencing people to buy things that they didn't need and didn't, or maybe couldn't afford all that well. That that bothers me, and I hope I can be a positive influence on people, not a negative one. And even if you are more sold on the Pro and you can afford it, I'm happy for you. And you can buy a Pro iPhone. That's great. Um, my hope is that by negatively talking about it and highlighting the cheaper options, I can at least ensure that you're getting the Pro for the right reason. Like if I crap talk the 14 Pro or the 15 Pro and say, the titanium is kind of ugly and it collects a lot of oils and fingerprints and it scratches easy, and I tell you that, hey, they didn't do much with the USB-C port, I don't think the USB-C port is worth it. um, all of that stuff, if I convince people that the 15 Pros aren't worth it, then I saved them money. And if I didn't convince you, then at least I know that you convinced yourself with proper logic. You were able to watch my video, hear me crap talk the 15 Pros, and say to yourself, no, despite everything Drew just said about the Pros, he's wrong because I need the 15 Pro for XYZ. And whatever that reason may be, it could be the battery life, it could be the port, and you're going to use that USB-C port for a certain reason, or you're going to need that telephoto lens for blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. That means if you are buying it, you know in your heart of hearts that it was the right decision. You're buying it for the right reason. You're not buying it because you saw other YouTubers buying it and those other YouTubers were like, "Yeah, let's get the Pros. Woo! We got the newest and greatest thing." Um, you don't just fall into that. And then if you weren't going to get the Pro and you watch all the YouTube videos and you see all the polls, I'm like, "Oh my God, everybody's buying the Pros." Um, I don't want people to feel pressured into spending more money than they need to, especially when we're in an economic climate where, particularly in the United States, there's massive issues with debt, massive issues with consumerism, and people spending way more than they can afford. And Apple's not helping with this, of course, because they've got this state of the art marketing that makes everything look cool and important. And we also have Apple coming up with more and more financing options. Apple Pay Later. Here's an Apple Card. Oh, you don't need to pay for it now. You can finance it. You can get into more debt and pay it off over time. So Apple's encouraging this massive consumerist problem we have in our culture and with people spending more than we should. And my hope is to be, hopefully, the antithesis of that tries to make sure. I'm not saying you can't buy tech. And again, I don't want people thinking I don't like technology. That's not the point I'm getting at. My point is that we spend the proper amount of money on the equipment that we need, and we don't spend more. We don't live outside of our means, because I've, thanks to you guys, and you're watching the channel, watching the streams, and people like Bryce Summer, who just became a Tailosive Tech Plus member. Thank you very much for your support. Thanks to your generosity, you let me live a very, very, in my opinion, comfortable life where I have a lot of flexibility with my time, where I can work. I can take my laptop to the Philippines and Thailand and Hawaii and Idaho. I can travel to all these places and work there with this flexible job with dynamic, income is changing, but it doesn't matter because we've kept our expenses low. So, um, I want more people to experience what I've experienced. I love this job, by the way. This is so much fun to me. I enjoy talking about the differences and the features and the battery perks and all that. And I want more people to be able to have I don't want everybody to be a YouTuber, obviously, because there's more to life than that. But I want more people to have options. There's so many advantages to having more financial freedom. It's not just, okay, great, now you can make YouTube videos. I mean, like, you don't have to work as long at jobs that you don't like, and you can spend more time on your health or more time with your loved ones. And honestly, I think a lot of relationships, maybe even a lot of marriages, struggle simply because they don't have enough time together. Um, I think a lot of marriages get bogged down and struggle with logistics, and a lot of that comes down to having two, working partners that are maybe spending more than they can afford. So because they need to stay on top of their bills, they have to work jobs that they're not necessarily that comfortable with, but they don't have a choice because all of their focus is on uh, I got to work this job because this job has the pay I want. Even though I don't really like the job, I got to work longer hours to bring in the money to afford the lifestyle. So you're spending more time at work, more time with people, or more time on jobs you don't necessarily like, brings you in a more stressed out, tired mood. So when you come back, the relationship, you're both worn out and you both feel like you're sacrificing more than the other, and that can create bad dynamics. So I just think that the financial struggles are the root of a lot of issues in our world. Um, so I think that's a important thing that more people should be aware of and take care of. That it's probably not talked about enough on other tech channels. Another enemy of Apple's business is the refurbished market. Here in Europe, they sell really well. Oh yeah, everywhere there's a huge market. I just met a guy the other day that actually just he sells iPhones for a living, but he doesn't use an iPhone. He uses a One Plus, which I thought was interesting. He's a One Plus user, but for a living he just buys and sells. He buys up broken iPhones and fixes them up and then resells them. And he's sold hundreds of iPhones. Most of them not new. Most of them are old iPhone 11s and 12s and 13s. He's not buying flagship iPhones all that much. He's just making a couple $100 per sale. That guy makes a living off of used iPhones. It's kind of amazing. Um, but yeah, why do I prefer iPhones over Android? Because I've always had Android phones. I also now have an SE2, and I don't get it. The iPhone is just another smartphone. I think it comes down to the software. I prefer the UI. I think the App Store is better on iOS. You get more app optimization. Um, iOS tends to have better long-term software support. I don't really have anything against Android. I don't fault anybody for using Android. It's kind of like having two different colors. It's two different takes on a smartphone. Android's a bit more customization focused. iOS is a bit more optimization focused. If you care more about customization, then the Android will work probably better for you. If you care more about the optimization, the iPhone will probably work better for you. It's not it's like asking what's better, a hammer or a saw. It's like, well, what are we doing? If we're cutting down a tree, a saw is going to be better. If we're putting in nails, a hammer is going to be better. It just depends on the person. So I'm not saying for me personally, I prefer iPhones, and I've used iPhones more than Android, so that's why I mostly talk about iPhones, because they also tend to hold their resale value better, I've found. So if you're looking for an investment in a phone that you plan on selling later, an iPhone's probably going to do better. Um, so it's just a personal preference thing, but I'm not trying to say you are wrong if you choose Android. I just think in general, there's a reason iPhones are so popular, even though they're lacking a lot of Android features. Android checks a lot of boxes. We can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do that. But Android usually doesn't do it in the most user friendly way, the most intuitive way. They just kind of do it for the sake of doing it. But people just feel more comfortable with an iPhone because it just feels more consistent, more reliable, and the apps feel more optimized. The animations feel a bit more responsive, a bit smoother. The app stores feel a bit more simple. There's less malware on iOS. So, I mean, I still have an Android phone somewhere. Um, I've used both. I can get by with Android for the record. I can't get by with Windows. I can't live with Windows. I tried. I tried Windows and I couldn't. It just for my use cases it didn't work. But I've switched to Android for extended periods and it's fine. I don't think it's better than iOS, but I can do it. I don't hate Android. I think iOS gets the job done better. Would I ever try a foldable for a month? I tried a couple foldables for several weeks and I my opinion on them was not changing. My opinion on them was the folding feature is not that helpful. My criticism of foldables is not about how much they cost. It's not about durability. It's not even so much about software. It's just that the fact that it folds doesn't help much. If anything, it just annoys me because now I have two different ways to use the phone, and every time I take my phone out of my pocket, I don't want to have to make another decision. I don't even like biometrics on my phone. I feel like the biometrics are taking up too much time, so that's why I got rid of the passcode. There's no Face ID. I can just wait. Let me make sure I'm not about to dox myself. I can just without using Face ID swipe up to go home because I don't. I just like many people. I don't care about all that. I just want my phone to work. I just want to pull it out of my pocket and I can text who I need to text or watch what I need to watch. I don't want to have to pull it out and go, let me open. Oh, I can use the outside display. Oh, well, now I need to use the inside display. Oh, now I can fold it up again. I don't care. That seems to be the running theme with a lot of everyday consumers too. The people with folding phones don't unfold them very much. There was a lot of people I was watching on Twitter and on YouTube say that the outside display is unusable, so I don't want to use this phone because I have to open it up. It's like I want to buy a folding phone that works great when folded up. It's like, so you just want a normal phone. Okay, got it. And they also happen to be more expensive and be a bit more durability limited in some ways. But when I was talking about the charging cable on the back, I mean on the side brick. Sorry, I know you're probably using dictation and it's not what you literally wrote. Sol Rack M7 was, I mean, on the brick side, is it normal USB or is it USB Type C? So they don't include a charge brick in the box anymore, but the cable included with the iPhone is USB-C to USB-C. So you have to make sure that you get a charge brick with USB-C on it if you want to use the included cable. If you have a USB-A to Type-C charger already, that will charge the iPhone. You don't need a special cable to charge it. Any USB-C cable should charge it. But the included cable is Type-C. Talking about the charging cable on the back. On the side brick side, is it normal USB? Yeah, it just depends on which brick you get. I hope that answered your question. Foldable phones are so limited in terms of power, so if you need a phone for productivity, just a normal plus phone. Well, the bigger issue I felt like, because I tried a Z Flip for a while, and that really annoyed me because I was like, every time I take my phone out of my pocket, I got to flip it open, and that's this extra step that I didn't. I got to flip it open and unlock it with biometrics, and I don't like that extra complexity. I just want to take the phone out and use it. With the bigger phone like the Z Fold, when I tried that, I didn't find unfolded. People kept saying it's like a tablet like experience, and I did not feel like that. I was like, no tablets are that small. No one uses a tablet that small. And the tablets that are that small are so close to phones. Like the actual usable screen space on a folding phone is not that much bigger than just a phablet, just a big rectangular phone. A Pro Max is pretty much the same experience as a folding phone, and the build quality and the materials feel a lot better that way. You're not as worried about the hinges or the crease in the screen or whatever. Do you ever feel like they will run out of ideas with smartphones eventually? I think they software lock phones in order for you to upgrade in the future. I think that's happening now. I don't think that'll be a black and white line like, okay, we forgot. We're in the age of refinement. We're still in that age. We're still in the age of okay, a little bit better camera, a little bit faster chip, a little bit brighter display, a little bit better port speed. Every year is refinement. So technically, yes, the iPhone has never been better. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, in my opinion, is the best smartphone of all time. It is better than the 14 Pro Max in every way, which is better than the 13 Pro Max in every way. Every year they get a little bit better, but are those extra features that much better? And do they justify spending more money? I don't think so. Um, I'm buying 15 plus 256 gig black for 60 SPF, constant gaming and UI and apps. I hope you like it. Congratulations. I would have recommended a probably 13 Pro Max because then you'd get higher display, better camera. But you do you. Maybe you really wanted USB-C. An easy way for optimized charging to work is to set alarms for the next morning like an average person. Well, not all of us do that, but also a lot of the time our phones are capped at 100% is when we're not asleep. It's when we're charging at a desk or charging in the car. You don't want it to go past 80% and damage your battery health. Why didn't they release an iPhone 15 white? Because I'm still crying. They did. They just called it blue. The blue iPhone 15 is basically just a very, very cool color temperature white. So that's why I wanted a white iPhone 15 too, which is why I got the blue one because it basically looked white. Celebrities look at celebrities that have more money than they know what to do with, yet they have more problems than less fortunate people do. That's true. Celebrities, we're watching a TV show right now that I'd heard a lot about. It's not a news show, but we're watching a show right now that I'd heard a lot about, but I never watched. It's very inappropriate, and you shouldn't watch it because it should be rated R, probably worse than rated R. Um, but it's called Curb Your Enthusiasm, starring Larry David. And the show is about this very rich, successful guy with a lot of money, and it's not about middle class drama. It's definitely about upper class drama. But what I kind of enjoy and like about the show is, for one, he's just funny, and he's similar. He's best friends with like Jerry Seinfeld, so they have very similar comedic styles of picking up on little micro human behaviors and critiquing the way we treat each other, but don't address it much. But what I like about the show is it shows you that even if you're rich and successful and famous, life doesn't get easier. It's like you have different problems, but there's still problems. And I'm not trying to say that there aren't people struggling with financial issues. There's definitely some problems that money solves, but I forget who it was. Maybe it was Jordan Peterson. Someone I was listening to a few years ago did this study on, can money buy you happiness? Because that's a big question. And I think that is a good question. I don't, some people are like, of course not. And then other people are like, of course it can. Well, duh. I think it's a bit more complicated of an answer. I don't think it's a yes or no. And what I liked about this study someone did was about measuring the quality of life of someone based on their income. And they said there was a certain limit where it stopped being a factor. So obviously the richest people aren't the happiest. Um, but there tends to be more problems and more stressful life events that show up if you're on a super low income. If you don't know what you're going to eat and you don't know where you're going to live, that's very stressful and you're not going to be that happy. So in that situation, yes, the money, if you had the money, that literally buys you more happiness because it solves those really stressful problems like, what am I going to eat? Where am I going to live? Those are important. So to a certain extent, yes, money can buy that person happiness. But it was when, I think the number they gave for that study was like $70,000 a year. It was something like that. They were like, okay, money can buy you happiness up to $70,000 a year. And the answer probably changes depending on where you live in the world. But because there's different, in the Bay Area, 70 grand is basically the poverty line. In Kansas, 70 grand means you're living like a king. Um, yeah, George is Larry, stressing over every minute. Exactly. You can definitely tell the George Costanza character. That's who Larry David is. But Larry is right most of the time. Just saying, I don't know. I've been watching this show a lot, and I feel like Larry is just a moron and an idiot most of the time. But yes, sometimes he has a point. But um, after about 70 grand a year, the amount of money you make doesn't appear to have that much of an effect on your overall happiness. And I can say that from personal experience as well. I know people that have made far more than I have, and they seem very stressed and they seem very overworked. And like, there's some people that make a lot more money than I do, obviously, because I don't make that much. There's some people that make way more than I do, but they do not seem happier and they don't seem more free to me. Like, sure, they make more and they have more, they have more cars, they have a bigger house, but they have to keep working that high paying job, which can sometimes be a lot more stressful in order to maintain that lifestyle. So they may be making way more, but they're not necessarily happier and they don't necessarily have more flexibility and freedom. So they they've got a higher number, but they're not. They're not more free. They're stressed out by work. There's all these responsibilities. They're managing people. They have to take care of all of these people that they're managing, and all of those people are giving them negative feedback, and then they're hearing negative feedback from their bosses, and then they have all these bills to keep up with all of the bigger house and bigger cars and all that. So it's just, yeah, money definitely don't buy happiness, but um it can for certain situations, I guess. By what age do I want to retire the channels? I don't really have one in mind. I can't visualize. I'm never gonna rule out any possibility. There's a chance I might want to retire someday if I just get sick of YouTube or decide that it's not for me anymore, or maybe I have more health issues in the future and I feel like, you know what, I just can't keep doing this. But at least right now, my current opinion in 2023 is that I would like to continue doing YouTube indefinitely, even if I was in my 80s and 90s, even when I'm really super old and I can barely walk around. I still think it would be fun to, even in when I'm an old man, just sit down, hit the go live button and talk to some of you. Maybe you'll still be here. Maybe that would be fun for me, just to still have a group of people that are interested in technology and still interested in talking about iPhones and asking about, well, if we're on iPhones, maybe it'll be all Vision Pro by then, or talking about electric cars or whatever. Maybe new technologies that we don't even know about yet. We'll all be talking about Neuralinks or something. Um, I think at this stage in life, that sounds fun for me. I would enjoy that, but I'm not going to commit to that necessarily because I can understand that my tastes have changed over time. My opinions on subjects have changed over time, so maybe my opinions will change again. I don't have kids right now. Maybe if I had kids, I would feel differently. I'd be like, I want to spend more time with my kids and less time on YouTube. That's possible. I don't know. I'm not going to commit to anything. I'm just going to tell you how I feel right now, which is that I think I could do this forever. I think I could. I enjoy it. I think it's fun. I like bouncing ideas off of you guys. I like hearing your perspectives. I feel like you educate me on a lot of things too. Daddy, this man on the internet wants me to keep my old iPhone 43. Oh, don't listen to him. You need the iPhone 50. I've not played Mortal Kombat. Sorry, no. If I have a normal brick from 2016, which is regular USB, it's not going to work with a new cable, meaning a USB female is not going to work. I need to get a newer big brick. It depends on what's on the other end of that brick. If you're talking about a regular USB to Lightning, yes, that will not work. You will need a USB-C brick. I would love if my iPhone stopped charging at 80% when in the car, since my car doesn't have wireless CarPlay. See, Skylar, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what this charge limit would be beneficial for. Have I ever thought about talking about iPhone prices in terms of cost per year of software support? I think I've kind of done videos on that, but the problem is it's different for everybody. So it's kind of hard to have a one size fits all because most people are trading in their old iPhones. So if you're trading in an iPhone 11, you're going to have different numbers than someone who's trading in an iPhone 14. Um, and certain carriers have different trade-in deals. Sometimes Verizon will give you $1,000 trade-in if you bring in your old phone and sign up for a certain plan, and AT&T is not going to have that same offer. So it gets way too specific, which is why I tend to generalize it and just say focus on what is the more cost-effective solution instead of getting into the individual prices, because $1,000 means something very different if your income, if you make 20 grand a year, $1,000 is a lot more than someone who makes 200 grand a year. And I bet we have people watching this channel in all those categories. We probably have some people watching that make less than 20 grand a year, and we have some people watching that make more than 200 grand a year. So there, even though it's the same number, there can't be just a blanket statement of, okay, this is worth it and this is not worth it. If you're all making 200 grand a year, then yeah, everybody should just buy the Pro Max, I guess, every year. Why not? It makes no difference to you. But I don't think that's most people watching. I think there's a lot of kids watching that don't even have much of an income yet, which is why I'm trying to do my best to educate and inform on how to make wise financial decisions. Broke college students, rise up. um, Jason Tan says he'll be watching for years to come. Been a fan of your vid since 2016 when you ran your channel off the iPad. Wow, you really are an OG. That was a long time ago. Why does Apple have four different iPhones, which there were 2 to 3 iPhones a year? They've made too many options. I think there's probably a lot of truth to the decoy effect, which is you put one iPhone in the lineup that doesn't look like that good a deal, but it makes the Pros look like a much better deal. So you're not thinking there's a $200 difference between the 15 and the 15 Pro. You see the 15 Plus, and when it's unlocked, it's actually $930, and you go, well, at $930, that's only $70 more to get a 15 Pro. And then you say, oh, well, 15 Pro, it's only $50 more to get a higher storage configuration. Oh, well, if I get that storage configuration, I'm so close to getting a Pro Max. So that little mental ladder they put you through, um, where they keep walking you up a little bit more, it's a business tactic that's effective, and it convinces people to spend more. So it's a real thing. It's been around. There's books on it and stuff. Um, let's see. Missed the financial tip series on life. If I had a specific like, here's a good financial tip, I would make a video on it. But I don't have like specific advice. I just kind of have general advice. Um, Most of my audience is in their 20s and 30s. Yeah, probably. But we have a lot of on the other end too. There's a lot of people below 20, and there's a lot of people above 40. Um, I started watching around 2017 when the iPhone 8 and 10 leaks started, when I was a literal child. Yeah, I remember that was a big year. That was probably my biggest one of my biggest years in terms of growth. That's when it really well, it stands out to me because when I started talking about the iPhone 10 leaks, back then we called it the iPhone 8, but later it was obviously branded the 10. At the beginning of the year, this was not my full-time job. I worked at a mandarin ranch, and that was my more full-time job, and then I did YouTube on the side. But by the end of that year, I had quit that job and I was doing YouTube full time. So the iPhone 8 and 10 leaks basically were what carried me out of working a manual labor job into a full-time YouTube position. So it's kind of a big transitionary year for me. But yeah, I've been doing YouTube full time ever since. Someone was asking earlier, is this a side hustle or is this a job? And my answer is it's both. I mean, it started as a side hustle for many years, and then it became a full-time job. Um, yeah, I'd argue it's not even full-time really, but I'm not doing anything else other than this. This is it. This is my main income source is YouTube. Um, I feel like I could never stop watching. Always would like to know your opinion on certain things. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, but also you don't need to commit to it, by the way. There are many YouTube channels that I used to watch more frequently that I stopped watching because I got tired of the narrative or of the coverage or even just the genre. The genre itself got boring to me for certain channels, so I would stop watching them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't fault anyone for unsubscribing from this channel or not watching me anymore because I've done the same thing to other channels. I used to be more interested in certain topics and then I lost interest. I used to watch way more tech videos about iPhones and stuff, but maybe it's because I've been doing it for so long or because it takes up so much of my time. But now I don't watch that many. Now I find myself watching more EV related content because that's just more interesting to me. So, and there's even some EV channels that I used to watch more frequently, but then I kind of got tired of the narrative they were pushing and I kind of got burnt out on them. So I stopped watching and I unsubscribed. Nothing really against them personally. I just didn't really your taste changed. You'll have different favorite flavors when you're a kid versus when you're an adult. When I was a kid, all I wanted to eat was pizza and ice cream. Now I get older and I start to crave myself. I could really go for a good salad right now. I'd like some good, fresh vegetables, or I'd like a nice cooked um steak, or your preferences change over time. That's just part of growing up. So that same thing happens with the type of YouTube videos you watch. I don't watch the same content that I used to when I was a kid. So in the same way, I know there's a lot of people that probably used to watch me and have stopped watching, and I totally understand and respect that. So I appreciate you saying you'll stick around. That means a lot to me because it does help me out. But we're doing our best to manage our finances in a responsible way, and we've been investing a lot this year, actually, putting money aside so that we are prepared for times where maybe YouTube income isn't that good. But I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to like succumb to clickbaiting or sponsorships or do whatever so that I can keep doing this job. I want to just keep the integrity and keep the honesty so that I don't have to fall into any bad behaviors or do the more desperate things that you see other YouTubers have to do all the time because they've inflated their budget so much. They kind of have to make a certain amount of money, otherwise they can't pay their bills, which is much more stressful. And then you have a lot less freedom, which in my opinion means, okay, yeah, there's other channels that probably have more money than me and more subscribers, but I don't think they're happier. I don't know. I guess it depends on where you derive your true happiness. Is it from numbers? Is it from finances? Is it from growth? Is it from views? Is that how you define happiness or success? Or do you measure it in friends, like freedom, flexibility, honesty? How do you improve a relationship? You keep it honest, right? Feel like the phone market has stalled in the last few years. I think it's not stalled. It's stalled implies that it'll pick up again. I don't think a phone market will ever be more interesting than it is right now. It's probably going to get progressively more stale as years go on. It's all just as we get rid of the dynamic island and then we get the ProMotion displays and we get faster charging. It all phones are just going to blur into the same rectangles. Um, let's see. Tailosive Finance channel would be a huge jump for you and help. We've done finance stuff on the Life channel because I can't. There's not enough topics for me to do a whole channel just for finance. But what would be your plan if YouTube revenue suddenly just stopped? Actually, I'm making a decent amount through Twitter now, so I'd probably go all in on Twitter. um, actually, more than I expected, which is kind of cool. So I'm diversifying a little bit with that. I still make more on YouTube, but Twitter's actually picking up quite a bit. And I'd probably try a few things, like try to go more double down on either posting to Twitter or maybe reviving an old Patreon. I don't really use Patreon much anymore, but if YouTube AdSense went away, I would be more motivated to be like, "Hey, do you want me to keep posting content? Here's some perks on Patreon. Here's some things we could do to try to incentivize it to be a bit more crowd-funded." And if all that went away, like, okay, I can't make money from Twitter or YouTube, then I'll probably just do Uber. The good news is we've gotten our budget kind of under control and reasonable to the point that we don't have to make very much to support our lifestyle. So I could probably just drive for Uber and I'd make enough to pay all my bills, which is nice. Not everybody can do that, I know, but it's a combination of living in a low cost of living area and living within your means. So when it comes to spending money on an iPhone, I have a simple approach. Sell before the event, high value, and then spend $100 to $200 to upgrade to the new one. Monthly equivalent works out to $16 per month. That's pretty good if you can make that work. I just like the approach of doing that same thing, but with the used iPhones. It's probably even less than that. Do I think the iPhone 14 is a good phone while taking the 13 into consideration? No. I will never recommend a regular iPhone 14 or 14 Plus. I've tried my best to make that incredibly clear with all my videos. iPhone 14 will never be worth it because the 13 will always exist and it will always be cheaper. Um, yeah, I mean, I liked Twitter. I mostly used it for news. I didn't used to post that much until they started letting you monetize it. But I was like, well, wait a minute. You're gonna pay me for this? Okay, I might try a little harder if you pay me. It's the same thing if you wouldn't see me post on YouTube that much if they didn't pay me either. When there's motivation behind it, and it's not like ooh he just cares about money. It's like if you're making money from it, you can justify the time spent on it. It's why I kind of gave up on Discord. Is it's like um, I wasn't making anything off of Discord, but it was taking up a lot of my time. Um, which is hard to justify. Whereas if I've got some free time in the day and I can spend it on either YouTube and Twitter and bring in money from that, then I can justify it. And thanks to you guys and your support and the number of people watching me, that means I don't have to work some other job to pay my bills. I can just do this full time, and that brings in enough to pay all the bills and then some. So we have some left over to invest in stuff. So yeah, it makes sense. If you pay people, they'll tweet more. For sure. Have I not seen what Tech Odyssey is getting? It's ridiculous how YouTubers get hate. No, I don't know anything about them. Um, Eventually I see Apple killing the iPhone with a new product or headset by the 2030s. I don't think so. I don't think a headset would kill a phone. But I still think a headset could be a big deal. I still think Apple Vision Pro could be very very impactful and changed the way we use technology, but I still don't see it killing the phone. Maybe transforming the phone a bit, but think in the same way the iPhone did not kill the Mac. The Mac has been around for arguably, what, 30, 40 years now? There's still Macintosh, even though the technology landscape has fundamentally changed. And the main reason you get a Mac now is not really the same reason you used to get a Mac. Mac is a bit more productivity focused now, it's a bit more work related. You don't just buy a Mac so you can send texts anymore. Um, or check email. Now your phone can do that. But in a similar way, I think the headset could change the way we use our phones, because the main advantage of the phone, I think, is always going to be the camera. Um, and it'll be cheaper. The phone will probably always have a better battery life and a better camera, and it'll be always cheaper than a Vision Pro headset, but or a Vision headset of any kind. But the Vision headset is going to be very insightful or impactful, I think, when it comes to visuals. Maybe it could replace TVs, it could replace monitors, external monitors, it could replace tablets, even potentially, if you just do a stylus and it can just draw on top of whatever you're writing on. You could even charge the stylus on the side of the headset. You just click it there. Be kind of cool. But um, when you want to take a selfie with someone, that's not going to be easy to do with glasses. Or you want to do a FaceTime call, that's not going to be easy to do without some kind of dedicated camera. And the iPhone already has been transforming more and more into a dedicated camera. It's just more and more of its emphasis. And I think that the headset might encourage that. The headset could replace a lot of the smartphone's functionality, but not the camera features. Viewing content on flat glass screens is going to feel very antiquated within the next decade or so. Mm, I don't know. I still think there's some pretty massive challenges with the headsets that are. It's going to take time, but I think it will eventually be resolved. Um, what was my first ever YouTube video on this channel? It's still up. You can watch it. If you go to the videos tab on this channel, you can sort by oldest, and it's the first video I ever posted. It was a channel greeting where I just kind of introduced myself. It's really embarrassing. It's really cringy, and you should all watch it. Um, Drew got a lot of hate in 2018, and I felt bad for him. Well, I probably deserved it, but my girlfriend wanted a new phone, and I said buy the 13 because it's the same as the 14, and she said no, I will get the latest model. She got a 14. She didn't wait for the 15 at least. Come on, Lukey Papa's girlfriend. Give him a break. It's the same phone. Eventually, Apple would make an AR tech and normal glasses, and that's when it'll be sick. I don't know. I'm starting to think there might be more to the idea of just doing displays on the inside. I think that might always be cheaper than glasses. I don't think you need the eyesight display, but I do think there's something to just something that kind of looks like goggles, I think. That might stick around more than we think. Um, do you this the user experience would feel different going from 13 Pro to 15 Pro Max? A little bit. You probably don't need to upgrade though. 13 Pro is still a great phone. Unless there's something inherently wrong with it or something you think you'll really utilize on the 15 Pro Max, I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, the Apple Vision SE will cost $1,500, which is on the high end of the iPhone. And by the time the Vision SE comes out, you'll probably be able to buy a 15 Pro Max for like $600. So glasses are pretty far out. I think that I'm actually a bit more of a believer in the headset catching on more than the glasses. For battery life. Battery life is going to be a huge problem with glasses. Less so with the headset. But anyway, I've been live for a while. I appreciate the super chats. I think it's lunchtime, so I'm going to end it here. But I appreciate you all for tuning in and for watching. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. And I love this speculation we're doing. This is so much fun for me. And I hope it's fun for you too. So take care, all. Have a good one. Bye bye.